What is up, degenerates? It is Monday. Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast, and we are headed back to Fight Island. We're hitting the road. We're going to Abu Dhabi. I'm so pumped up. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. I got the hair all did up. I got the beard trimmed. Looking good for the UFC 267 live stream. I hope everybody is doing great this evening. Thank you all so much for jumping in with me here to do the show. As always, we are talking fights. We are talking sports betting. We are ready to rock and roll. How is the chat doing? We've got Dog MMA, Mystic Sosa, Grateful Dude, Ryan Grant rocking the t-shirt right off the bat, Joseph Nussbaum, SD Cruiser, Boston Nick MMA, buddy. How you doing? Todd Stout. And we've got an early donation. We've got Paula Lou Diamond Phillips saying, going back to the earlier threads about the best MMA nicknames, just wondering, how did we forget Shoeface? And you absolutely nailed it. I have no idea, and I need to issue a formal public apology because anybody who's got the balls to name themselves Shoeface going into mixed martial arts as a professional career, they deserve the credit. So they absolutely do. It's a good, solid MMA nickname. Thank you very much for the donation, my friend, helping us keep the lights here on at Pub Sports Radio, always bringing you all the free content we can get our hands on. Uncle Wheezy in the chant. Ryan Grant asking for the lucky head rub. There you go, buddy. We're on board. We're all ready to rock here. Cody Eichholz. We've got Chris Warm, Dan Goldstein, Gabriel Rosario, iHeavy08, Fender Jazz, Peter Houghton. We have the whole crew ready to rock and roll this evening, and this is going to be a good one, folks. Last week was a big card. I lost less than a unit, minus 0.7. Had some great calls, had some bad calls, caught a couple of bad bounces. What the fuck do freaking Choi? You get submitted by Alex Caceres. What are you doing? But we can't spend a ton of time on that because we got like 15 freaking fights to break down, and I have a fantastic guest for you this evening, one of the sharpest men in the gambling Twitter space, my guy Luke from SWR Sparring with Reality Betting. You may know him from the Club and Sub podcast. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
How's it going, Clint? Yeah, you kind of hit it, man. 15 fight card over back to Fight Island. Ton of Russians, a lot of tough dudes in here. Some violence. Looking forward to chopping it up.
I can't wait, man. This is a solid card. And I'm basically going to bookend it by saying one guy's going to take the other one down. The other one needs takedown defense. That's it. That's the show, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's the Russian invasion, man. We've got a Russian on almost, it's like, what, 80% of the fights on this card?
Yeah, I think there's like, I think I ran it. There's like 15 guys that have a V at the end of their name or something like that.
I love it. It's going to be good, though, man. Because honestly, if you watch the tape, which I know you tend to do, there's some good matchups here. I mean, even though we're used to these guys just being dominant grapplers, and more often than not, we're like, he's just going to take him down and smother him. I feel like the matchmakers did a really good job of putting solid tests in front of these guys. So I don't know that it's necessarily just going to be everyone gets rolled over on this Saturday's fight card. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. We were chatting about it a little before in the DMs. I've got some hot takes this week. You know, there's a decent amount of chalk this week, but I do think we have some pretty live underdogs with big plus numbers next to their names.
I like it, man. I love me some hot takes, and so do the people here in the chat, my fellow degenerates. All right, let's start. I guess I need to pump the brakes just a quick second. Luke, how did you do last weekend on UFC Vegas 41?
Actually, it's probably one of my better cards I've had in a second. I think I went 6 for 7 on bets for like 8 units or so of profit. The only one that lost was Ricci inside the distance. That was a bit of a tough L just because she was able to get into dominant positions, and I was pretty convinced if she was able to get off on that type of game plan, the levels on the ground were different. I figured she'd pound her out or submit her, but didn't happen. So that was a little interesting. But
I thought that one was over in the first.
Yeah.
When she got that dominant spot there at the end of the round, I was like, oh, that's it. Like, she's going to rinse and repeat as soon as round 2 starts. And I was with you, man. I had the sub prop finish, had her in the money line parlay, but that one went down in flames. Like I said, thank you, Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres, for that one. I always appreciate donating money to you. Glad you had a good card, man. Like I said, I less than a unit loss, minus 0.7, ended up being fine. Couple of good calls, couple of bad calls. Ike Villanueva, what was I thinking? And then I guess the real big thing for me, honestly, the only reason I had a bad weekend was Tim Johnson over in Bellator. Freaking the GOAT still got it.
Yeah, I had some money tied to Mr. Johnson too. Hindsight 2020, thinking about it, the under 1.5 was like minus 150. Like that was like an easy play. Like why not just do that? Like what were the chances that fight was extended? I thought about it hindsight. I'm like, why even lay the just bet the under? Like I don't know. I feel really dumb about that one hindsight.
I had that exact conversation with somebody. It wasn't you, but one of the other cappers on Twitter. I had that exact same conversation because I was like, I didn't even consider looking at the totals. I was so laser focused in on UFC, and apologize to anybody. I know I'm usually very active on Twitter and stuff like that. We celebrated my daughter's birthday over the weekend, so I was not as dialed in as I should have been, or as I usually am on the weekend stuff. So I didn't even consider the totals for Bellator, and setting that at 1.5, I would have smashed that. Like, forget the Tim Johnson bet. Under would have been the easiest bet of all time. That was only going to be a 1-round fight no matter who won it.
Yeah. But on and up we go. Plenty of fights coming ahead.
Yeah, man. We got a big fight card to get to, so let's go ahead and shout out, first off, the GOAT, Tagir in the house. What's up, buddy? Thank you so much for the donation. Back-to-back donations, actually. Thank you so much, Tagir. Everybody good. He's making sure everyone is ready to rock and roll. We appreciate you for hanging out. First fight of the evening, Luke. Let's get right into it. Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Allan Nascimento. And we've got a banger to kick us off right off the bat. Tagir is 13-1, and we have his opponent, Allan, 17-5. Tagir is your classic Dagestani Russian. I mean, I know we talked about how some of these are not going to be your same old toolbox. Tagir, yeah, kind of is. Grappling heavy offense. Looks to open you up with those strikes, choke you out as soon as he gets the opportunity to. On the feet, very serviceable, stiff jab, lunging cross, but he's a bit hittable. I've noticed that his striking defense is not quite where I would like it to be, but he averages 5 takedowns per 15 minutes and lands with a 45% accuracy. So that striking doesn't usually end up being too much of a problem because he ends up on the mat anyway. Now, Allan, on the flip side of this thing, he fought against Paiva on Dana White Contender Series Brazil. This dude is tall, he's long, he keeps that nice high guard up, but he likes to drop his hands and brawl. He does also like to level change, and one thing I noticed, man, he shoots and pulls guard. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. He's gone in for like a single leg, and then he like rolls to his back and relies on sweeping to get into a dominant position, and like kind of like climbs the tree and chain wrestles his way back into this thing where he more wants it to be. I don't like this spot at all for Nascimento at all, just because of that. If he's willing to accept bottom position, if he's willing to go in there and give up that takedown and try and fight from his back, you don't do that against a Russian, especially if someone the caliber of Tagir. So I think this is a pretty early favor to pass spot for me, in my opinion, just because of that grappling edge. Am I missing something on the first fight of the night, man?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. Originally going into it, I was thinking about taking the flyer on Nascimento just because, at least in terms of the striking here, I don't think like the margins are that wide between the two. I still do favor Tagir in a striking based fight, but you kind of noted, I mean, Nascimento, he'll go forward, chuck heat. I think he actually outlanded Paiva at distance, who we all know, has, a top 15 number next to his name and has beaten some good guys in the UFC to boot. So, I mean, if you told me this was a 15-minute range kickboxing match, I don't think Tagir is, minus 300 in that. But to your point, obviously kind of part of that Dagestani contingent, one of Khabib's boys, pretty strong combat sambo background, pretty strong from top position passing, but he's also one of those Russians who doesn't always just, necessarily lay and pray in the guard. He's actually got a pretty good submission and choke game to boot. So usually when you kind of throw those, or I should say these Russian sambo archetypes in there with Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, more often than not, the strong wrestlers coming out on top in those scenarios, especially if Nascimento is conceding takedowns, which I think would be an absolutely horrible game plan in this spot. Because Ulanbekov, like I said, he's not just a wrestler. The guy's actually a pretty decent grappler too. So Yeah, him being a reasonably sizable favorite, I think is justified by trying to lay, minus 300 with it, because I do think the striking could be competitive. I mean, Bruno Silva really got after Tagir despite winning a unanimous decision there. He beat his calf up pretty good, landed on him with consistency, and then he kind of slowed down and gassed a little bit too. So I still have some hesitations with him on the feet, which is why I wouldn't be running the window to lay this kind of a number, but it is a fight he should win at a moderate clip, coupled with Nascimento coming off a decent layoff too.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear that we agree early on. I'm worried that first fight is going to not really start us off the best. Everybody remember, these are morning fights. This is going to be another mimosa and waffles type of situation. So make sure you got your coffee. We're all still going to be waking up and blinking our heavy eyes for this first fight. And it might be a bit of a slog. So no worries there. We both agree it's kind of a favorite or pass type of situation. Tagir minus 350, maybe some parlay material, but we don't really know what we're getting with Allan. So far at this point, going to be a pass for me. I see what you're laying down there, Tajik. I got you. He says, everybody, good luck this week. Sincerely, the GOAT. We're going up. I like it, Tajik. Thank you very much for the donations. I appreciate it. We all do here at Pub Sports Radio. That was solid. I get what you're putting down there. Jacksonville Zoe in the house. What's up, buddy? Thanks for tuning in. Love seeing you back in the chats these days, my man. All right, next fight up, we've got Damir Ismagulov taking on Magomed Mustafaev. And right after the UFC lulls us to sleep with the first fight on the slate, we got a banger. This one should be far more interesting, in my opinion. Magomed Mustafaev is 14-4. Damir Ismagulov is 23-1. You may remember Magomed Mustafaev is the man that killed Rafael Fiziev. Everyone knows and loves our Rafael Fiziev. This was the man that spinning back kicked him to hell. He's a high-powered striker. He shot no takedowns in his first 4 UFC fights. But I do want to remind everybody that my boy Brad Riddell turned him into a classic Dagestani grappler real quick in their fight. He's got that big-time upper body strength, that grinding body lock. He likes to pin people up against the cage. He's more than capable of the Dagestani wrestling, the mat returns, but he likes to strike. He's a big, powerful striker. He throws hard body kicks. He loads up on that overhand right. We talked about the spinning heel kick already. This guy is no joke on the feet. He averages 3.31 takedowns per 15-minute fight with a 23% accuracy, so not quite as clean as some of the other wrestlers. And it looks like Brad Riddell kind of ruined his takedown defense rating. He's only got a 23% takedown defense rating. Damir on the flip side of this thing, I always talk about this guy being well-rounded, just solid everywhere. Crazy good cardio, good offensive wrestling, solid striking. He's got that stinging striking style, man. Very elusive, risk-adverse, likes to hit people and then not get hit back. He likes to attack the body. He's got great ground and pound. One of the things I think that is underrated about my guy Damir Ismagulov is how patient he is. He's not a guy that goes for the finish or rushes the finish when his opponents are hurt. He kind of lets it come to him, and if the finish is there, he'll take it. Otherwise, he has no problem taking down a 15-minute decision. If you remember in his last fight, though, he got knocked down bad in that first round by Rafael Alves, a guy coming up a weight class after missing on short notice. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage here, will Damir Ismagulov, and he is a decent wrestler himself, averages 1.75 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 36% accuracy. And so far in the UFC, he does have a 100% takedown defense rating. This is going to be a big step up in competition for Damir, though, in my opinion. If you look back on his record, you see some of the people that he's fought. While he's been incredibly impressive, in my opinion, he's kind of moving up in the world here for this one. And the fact that we've seen him clipped and seen him hurt, man, I'm worried Magomed Mustafaev is getting overlooked in this spot. Talk to me, Luke. How do you feel about this fight?
I guess I'm a little bit the other way. I think the chalk is justified here. I have been a Ismagulov truther for many years now. I've even ran his Russian regional tape quite a few times now. You touched on a lot of the main points. I think the guy's just immensely talented. His distance management, he kind of plays in that Russian coast-based game, but he's also like higher output in the Russian coast-based game. To your point, he's very risk-averse, understands distance very well, big straight shots, doesn't really chase finishes. If they come, they come. he's kind of like a high volume point fighter on the feet and just generally very well rounded. Where Mustafaev has kind of some similar tendencies, but I don't think his movement necessarily is there, and he's more so throwing in your singles shots. It's your spinning back fist, your spinning hook kick, your big overhand, that type of stuff. I just don't think that type of archetype is what's going to hit Damir really with anything. I mean, yeah, sure, the guy's explosive, powerful, clipped Fiziev, but I mean, if we're being completely honest, if Fiziev fights that dude like 10 times, I mean, Fiziev probably beats him like 8 to 9 times. It probably looks
different if they run it back, yeah.
Yeah, I just think the striking levels here are a bit different, and I think Mustafaev is largely reliant on a KO. In terms of the wrestling, I just don't see him having much success, even going back to Ismagulov's regional tape too, where he actually fought better wrestler archetypes in the past. Guys have shot on him. His hips are good. His mechanics are good. Digging a wide base, digging underhooks. The times he has been taken down, he's popped up relatively quickly. So I don't see the grind time he got on Brad Riddell being really transparent here. And Riddell is a guy who has been grinded before by Alex De Silva and dropped rounds that way too. So that wasn't the first time that's happened to Brad Riddell. So bringing it full circle, I think the win condition of Mustafaev is pretty much clipping him or having, really extended wrestling success, getting 8+ minutes of top control, 2 to 3 takedowns. Both scenarios I just don't see being very high percentage. Obviously, Ismagulov got clipped in his last outing, which is a little concerning, but over a large sample size, he's really never been hurt. And in that scenario, when he did get hurt, I thought he reacted to it very well. He recovered pretty quickly. I think Ismagulov has potential to be a top 15 guy at the weight class, to be honest. And not to mention, even that last fight against Alves, he was coming off, I think, a 2-year layoff. So there might have been a little bit of ring rust there because traditionally his performances are much better. I don't necessarily think it was that Alves just fought a great fight. I just think it was a bit of an off night for Tagir, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's a solid spot for him.
Okay. So a little bit of disagreement there on that one, and that's totally fine. That's what we're here for. Man, I'm kind of right there with you on Damir as far as I've been a Damir Ismagulov truther for the majority of his career so far, and he just gave me a heart attack in round 1 in his last fight when he got blasted. So I have not made a move yet. Actually, there's only one move I've made on this entire card, so full disclosure for everybody in the chat. Usually I like to come in here locked and loaded with 3 or 4 bets. I haven't bet anything yet on this card. This seems, shout out to the boys over at the Dogger Pass podcast. This seems like prime Cody Safdie, PRP style parlay night, if I do say so myself. So I'm kind of waiting. I'm going to talk to my guy Luke here and then move in on a couple spots after I feel a little bit more comfortable, because I think there's a couple of landmines. I think this is going to be mostly chalky, but there's a few landmines we want to avoid, and this is one of them where I felt like Damir getting a step up after a guy really fought pretty well against some high-level competition, and we'll see if he's ready for that. We've seen that Mustafaev can wrestle. We've seen that Mustafaev can strike. We've seen that big power. I'm a believer in Damir. I'm just worried that the line is a little bit wide in this spot, I guess. All right. We do have one more shout out from the GOAT here. Thank you again for another donation, Tajik. Remember the key, respect everything, and there's no substitute for a black turtleneck. Tajik, if I could rock a turtleneck half as well as you do, I would be a much more successful.
I think it was yesterday, so it's looking back.
Yep, you're going all robot voice on me there, Luke. We didn't get any of that. Is your internet okay?
Should be good. You got me?
You're better now. Go ahead and try again.
I was just going to say congrats to Will. I just saw he had his daughter either yesterday or today. So.
Yes. Big congrats. Thank you very much for reminding me. Big congrats, Will. Got a daughter myself. It's one hell of a ride. All right, man. Next fight up, Yaozong Hu taking on Andre Petroski. Man, right in the middle of all these monstrous fights with well-known names people we're used to, we got this fight right off the bat, dumped in the middle of this bad boy. Hu has 5 fights. He's 3-2 as a professional and still somehow finds himself in the UFC. Andre Petroski, 6-2. We just saw him on the Tough finale, so very familiar with what he does. He's a short notice fill-in for Allan Amedovski. I was actually really excited about that fight. I like Allan Amedovski and what he brings to the table. But Andre kind of fits the bill. He's a round one monster, man. Incredibly aggressive. Everything this guy does, it's with explosive power. Big, wild power hooks. He uses that striking to close the distance. He tries to get in on the body lock, drag people to the floor, lift them up. He just bodies people to the mat if he wants to. And he has a tight squeeze on him. Heavy ground and pound. He just mauls people from top position. Absolutely mauls people. Yaozong on the flip side, though, he hasn't fought since 2018. He's 0-2 in the UFC. Very, very little to know about what this kid is right now or what he's capable of at the moment. And that's kind of the biggest problem for me here in this spot. From what I saw, and again, this is, 3 years old footage at this point, he's pretty heavy on his feet. He's kind of a big lumbering striker, but he's got a good right cross. He doesn't really use combos. He's kind of a one and done type of puncher. He does land big, heavy leg kicks, and if he throws a combo, he finishes with those, but that's pretty rare. He does like to grind up against the cage. He's a big boy for the weight class and uses that size and that weight, but he's got a chin. Man, when he fought Coulter, I know Rashad Coulter isn't a guy that we talk about much. He's not in the UFC anymore, but he took the kitchen sink from that guy. Every single shot landed clean and flush. He took a 15-minute beating and kept coming. I've got this crazy feeling that we're going to see a brand new version of this kid, and he's going to be way better than the one that left us a couple of years ago. He's at that prime age for improvements. The problem is we don't really know what he's doing, what he's working on, so it's hard to make any type of a bet on or against him without that kind of information. Do you have anything here on this one, Luke, or have any ideas on how this thing might play out with this kid being gone so long?
Yeah, it's a pass for me, just given the long layoff. But I think on paper, it's an okay spot for Petroski, assuming he's able to get in there and wrestle. We saw Cyril Asker have a ton of success on him, but once again, it was a second ago. It was his debut, but obviously Petroski, strong wrestler, good grappler. But what I will say in Petroski's last fight is his last spot is a big favorite, despite, largely, looking good in terms of when the fight was on the ground. I mean, it took him roughly 3 rounds to get that guy out of there, which I was pretty shocked about. I thought the levels on the ground between those two guys were pretty evident, and it took him a second to get out of there. And what I will say with Petroski is his stand-up is still a little green, to be honest. He's got some hittable tendencies. Doesn't move a whole lot. So in a guy in, who we'll see how he comes back and looks. But to your point, the guy will come out here and throw heat. So, would I feel comfortable with, minus 200 on Petroski? If you told me this is a range kickboxing match, not at all. But I think he could potentially look his number if he's just able to go in there and wrestle. But we're going to see what kind of evolutions he was made in the last 3 to 4 years, which I just don't know. So this is probably one of the bigger stay away spots on the card for me.
Okay, I feel you there, man. I've got this weird tinfoil hat theory, man, that Yaozong just comes out and is a new beast. Kind of like my guy Aiden Simone was saying in the chat here. Petroski is the king of gassers, and I kind of felt that way as well. And in his contender, or not his contender series, in his Ultimate Fighter fight, he actually ended up getting the finish in the 3rd round, which was something that I was banking against him for. I did not expect him to come out and look as good as he did in the 3rd round. He dug deep. He did exactly what he needed to do, got the finish. Like, that was a big, big moment for him. I don't know if that completely erases my read or my fear of him having those gas tank issues, though, just because he got it done against one guy. So I'm very, very intrigued by who here. Now, it would be just kind of a blind dart, but I don't mind the plus 180 or so on Hugh here. And I might even take that round 3 sprinkle just purely on a gas tank fade, saying that Petroski is going to fade like he usually does, and we're going to see improvements from Yaozong. So we'll see what happens. That would be a very degenerate play of mine if I did pull that trigger, because like I said, it'd be a lot of a shot in the dark, but I'm very tempted. Next fight up. Let's go. Makwan Amirkhani taking on Lerone Murphy. I love this fight. I love this fight so much. Mr. Finland, the most punchable face on the UFC roster, taking on my favorite prospect in Lerone Murphy. I'm already talking bias, so you guys probably figured out what side I'm on. But Makwan is 16-6. Lerone is undefeated, 10-0 with the 1 draw. Man, Makwan is 1-3 in his last 4. This guy is he's a guy that just kind of never lived up to the hype. You know what I mean? He came in, we kind of thought big things of him, but he had that party boy exterior. He kind of like to not really care about his training, not take it too seriously. And then he said, you know what? I'm getting it together. I'm taking it seriously. I'm doing strength and conditioning for the first time in my life. And then he got his ass beat 2 fights back to back. Now, granted, he's been fighting a upper echelon level of competition. One of those ass beatings was to Barboza. One of them he got TKO'd in the 3rd round against my man Hurricane Shane. So he is fighting good fighters. And there were moments where he looked okay in some of those fights, but he was very, very defensive in a lot of them. A lot of those fights were highly one-sided for the 2nd and 3rd rounds. He's good in round 1, man, but I feel like he's another one of these gas tank issue fighters. He goes out there and does big movements. He doesn't set up his takedowns well, so he shoots from outside. He does big flying knees, spinning heel kicks, like big power motions, and if they don't pay off, he just gasses out. He just doesn't have it deeper in the fight. Lerone Murphy on the flip side of this thing, I just love this kid. His draw came to Hukov, someone who we'll talk about a little bit later on, which, I mean, when you're making your UFC debut against guys like that, like, you got to respect what this kid's bringing to the table. High-powered striker, good footwork. He's got great in and out movement, and he likes to attack the body. That's always one of my favorite things. When they rip that body, you know it's going to tax the gas tank for later on in the fight. And he's an absolute dog. This guy will go out on his shield. It has yet to happen yet, but he refuses to give up in a fight. He will always fight for your money, and he remains calm on the mat. That's something that is interesting because his grappling hasn't quite caught up with his striking yet, but in those transitions, in those grappling situations, he still just stays super, super, flat. He does not get emotional, does not get overly aggressive, does not panic. He has good submission defense, big, powerful ground and pound. I mean, we saw what he did to Ricardo Ramos when he had him on the ground in his last fight. He's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage here in this spot. And you may look at the stats and be a little worried about his 41% takedown defense rating against a high-powered grappler like Makwan Amirkhani. But the thing I like to see in this one, though, is not the takedown defense, but the get-up game. 6 of those takedowns came in that UFC debut fight against Tuhugov. And every time Lerone Murphy gets taken down after that point, he gets right up and he makes people pay for them trying to take him down. He's that guy that gasses people out, being the counter wrestler as opposed to being the wrestler. Man, I like Lerone Murphy, and I like him a lot here in this spot, Luke. What are you doing on this fight?
Yeah, this is going to be probably our first parting ways here.
Oh, here we go.
I think Amirkhani is an extremely live dog on this card, primarily for the Tuhugov fight. That was really the only fight we've seen him, I would say, aggressively wrestled. In my opinion, Tuhugov won that fight. I don't think it should have been a draw. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that, but that's fine. But at the end of the day, he was taken down on 6 out of 8 takedown attempts and controlled for roughly 2/3 of the fight. Amirkhani obviously comes from a really strong Greco and freestyle wrestling background. He's pretty consistent to shoot takedowns. He gets them at a high clip. His control rate, I think, is at roughly 66 to 70% of the times his fights are spent in the grappling. And if I am to make a parallel to Hugov, at least in terms of the wrestling, I don't think their general acumen is actually that far off. I think Amirkhani is a pretty good wrestler. I mean, the guy went out there and took the first round off of Shane Burgos, who I think has like a 90% takedown defense, and grinded him out. To your point, there are gas tank issues with Amirkhani, but once again, my take is more so in relation to, Makwan being like plus 250, plus 270 here. And so just based on his style and his game plan of what he's going to try to do, because there's no bones about that Murphy's the better striker here. Definitely not trying to make that argument. But my point is that Makwan will always maximize his win condition. And I think he can make it a close fight in relation to the number. And once again, talking about the Tuhugov fight, Amirkhani's a much more dangerous submission grappler. He's got a really good front headlock series. A large majority of his pro wins come via sub. I think half of his wins in the UFC do come via sub. So whereas, Tuhugov will also be more lay and pray, we've definitely seen more activity in terms of Amirkhani actually attempting subs, where we just haven't really had to see Murphy defensively grapple all that much. So am I going to be sweating bullets, when this fight gets extended and hits the 3rd round, assuming Amirkhani doesn't get blasted? Absolutely. But my take is more so that I just think he can make this a close fight. And in theory, if he's able to get off on his game plan, that also in theory limits the primary win equity of Murphy and him covering his price tag and just, kind of piecing up Amirkhani and potentially finding a KO. And you hit on another point too, man. Like he's fought like really good guys going to a split with Arnold Allan. Arnold Allan's a pretty good striker. Shane Burgos, we obviously know, is a top 15 level striker. Barbosa is an absolute savage. Really, outside of him getting absolutely pieced by Burgos, the most amount of significant strikes that Amirkhani has ever eaten in a fight is like 37. So you put all that into the soup. I mean, historically, he's not just getting his face boxed off over, a large sample size. I mean, that's a pretty low number of strikes that he's absorbing in the aggregate. So once again, Murphy, the better striker. Should he be favored here? Absolutely. I just think plus 250 on a style of a guy who's given Murphy the most troubles historically. I was willing to take a poke on Amirkhani.
Okay. Man, I am never going to try to talk somebody off of a dog shot, especially a big, juicy one like that. So I respect the play. Totally see what you're saying. When you've got a clear path to victory with a guy like that, like you said it best, actually, maximizing his win condition. That's a great way to put it. He's going to do exactly what he has to do to win, and he'll do it until he loses. I do like that. I know you mentioned him not taking all that much damage, but man, I can't get the Edson Barboza fight out of my head because I know he didn't take a lot of damage in that fight, and I actually backed Makwan Amirkhani in that fight because we know Edson's had a hard time with some stronger wrestlers before. The urgency was not there from Makwan Amirkhani. He wasn't as aggressive with the takedowns as I needed him to be, and it looked like he gave up on himself. I don't know. Again, I respect every single fighter that steps inside the cage, but I feel like Makwan is mentally weak. I feel like he breaks because when he's a great hammer and he's not a good nail, and as soon as he realized, oh shit, I'm not going to take Edson Barboza down, he just shelled up. That fight was about not letting the Shane Burgos fight happen again. He stayed safe. He stayed at range. He was willing to lose a staring contest rather than go for it and get the win. And that's the kind of thing that I'm over it. You know what I mean? I can't back him after that kind of a performance. And I actually have a hot take myself on this one, man. If you watch Lerone Murphy's fights, this kid has been trying to submit somebody. He has been hunting chokes time and time and time again, and he's been this close a couple of times to getting one. People think this kid's just a striker. He's got no wins by submission, so no one's ever going to see it coming, but he is actively pursuing a submission victory, and I think it happens this week. I'm going to be round 3 sprinkling my guy Lerone Murphy because I'm fading a bad gas tank. I'm fading a fighter that I think is going to be crumbling, and then I'm probably going to take a poke on that sub prop. None of those props are out right now, so I have no idea what the number is, but this guy is going to be all knockout, all inside the distance. They're not going to respect the potential submission threat, and when you get somebody who's tough, who's durable, who's hard to knock out, but they slow down, they tap. And that's the perfect recipe for a kid in the 3rd round who's going to look to try to get Makwan Amirkhani out of there at all costs, but can't quite knock him out. He'll go for the neck. I think we're going to get a choke in the 3rd round from my guy Lerone Murphy.
I will personally PayPal you $100 if he submits Makwan Amirkhani.
I like that. I like it. Somebody screen clip that. No, I'm just kidding. Luke's good for it. I'm not going to have to blackmail him or anything. But Jose, if you're watching, that still will make good Twitter content right there. Yeah, we know what's up here. We're round 3 sprinkling. So disagreement here on this fight. Yeah, DFS, right? Fluffy got Rodolfo. Anything is possible.
It's true.
Slight disagreement here, but I think we got some good points on both sides of this thing. I like it, man. Good luck. I disagreed with my guest last week when I parlayed a favorite, and he took a live dog and fucking Alex Caceres, man. So you're probably in a good position taking the value on the live dog flip side of me if history recently has anything to say about it.
Like I said, man, I mean, no supreme degree of confidence. It's a small play for me on a big plus number. It's kind of a bet I'm willing to lose. I think he can make it close.
I love those. I love those spots. Bets that you're willing to lose where you've got the value and the chances there, man. Those are my favorite, Luke. So I love it. I respect the shot, man. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to my sponsors, Goat Capital Sports. Make sure you check them out on Twitter at @GoatCapital_. They bet everything. They're going to give you a slate of picks for basically every single sport under the sun. Very reasonably priced packages. Go check them out. Let them know I sent you at @GoatCapital_. Sorry to be quick. We're moving along. Michal Lord Oleksiejczuk taking on Shamil Gamzatov. Not many close to the line fights on this card, man. There are not a ton of them. This one, relatively competitive. Shamil is only a minus 150 favorite with plus 125, plus 130 coming back on Michal Lord Oleksiejczuk. And man, if I was going to do a clickbaity, my most disappointing UFC prospects type of video, Michal Lord Oleksiejczuk would be very close to the top of my list on that one, man. I sang the praises for this kid. I was all about some Lord Michal. I love what he brings to the table. And he's just been so unimpressive lately. And I'll go ahead and say it. I think he may be a USADA victim. I think that might be part of the problem because he did get popped right before he came into the UFC, and it's just been kind of a consistent downtrend since then. But I still like his overall game. Michal is 15-4. He is small at 205, but he parlays that into a speed advantage. Very fast hands. This guy is aggressive. He's got fast boxing, sharp, crisp punches. And he likes to stay in the face of his opponents. He's always aggressive. He is another one of these guys that rips the body. And when I say rips, it's not just a guy that attacks the body. I mean, holy hell, like he will bloody up those ribs. He rolls and counters very, very well. Problem is he struggles with some of these bigger, stronger grappler types like we saw in the OSP, like we saw in the Jimmy Crute fight. The big, strong power wrestlers seem to kind of be the ones that get him. He did just get a split decision win over Modestas Bukauskas, who recently was extremely unimpressive and dropped from the UFC. So not a great look for him at this point for that to be his bounce back win where he was basically life and death with the guy that just got cut. Shamil Gamzatov is a 14-0 undefeated coming here, three-time Abu Dhabi BJJ tournament winner. But another one of these guys that hasn't fought in a long time, hasn't fought since 2019, and he won a split decision over Klidson Abreu. Another very interesting point because Abreu is no longer with the organization anymore. He has been dropped and not looking good since. So you got to wonder how much we should really take from that win. 4 previously scheduled fights for Gamzatov were all canceled. He withdrew from them, 2 of them. He had corona once and then visa issues for the other one. So he's been trying to get back into action. He's got big, heavy leg kicks. He likes to attack that low calf. He does have a nice lead left hook that I noticed, but he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, and his main bread and butter really should be his grappling. This is another spot where Michal is screaming at me to back him, Luke. Like, I want to take the dog here in this spot in a bounce back, but all the numbers, all the information points the other way. Like, I want to bet the dog here, but I need a reason to do it, and I can't find one in the numbers. Luke, besides the layoff, talk to me, man. Can you talk me into a Michal Lord revenge train bet here on Saturday?
All right. In the case of trying to talk you into a bet, I'll bring up one thing. You brought up, Gamzatov's extensive grappling background, combat sambo. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but the guy doesn't wrestle. And when the guy has wrestled, he's getting stuffed every single time. I mean, I watched a decent amount of tape on the guy, to be honest, and what his grappling credentials provide on paper don't really add up in any of the tape I've watched at all. So obviously, given McCall's struggles historically have been on the ground against those archetypes, for Gamzatov's background, to be honest, he's more of a guy who's willing to stand and strike, at least in his last 4 to 5 fights more so. And, he's kind of in that Russian coast category that I would put where, he doesn't really throw a lot. It's largely, either single shots, 2-shot combos, even the fights that he's winning on the feet. He's not really winning them by a significant margin, and guys just haven't really thrown much back at him to boot. Whereas if you bring that to Oleksiejczuk, your point, he's obviously undersized at the division, but he's pretty consistent to go forward. He's pretty consistent to throw a lot of strikes. He's been dinged on a few occasions, but, largely pretty durable. His pace is pretty consistent. The gas tank is still a little bit questionable. He death gassed against OSP. It eventually got taken down, which needs to be noted. And obviously that other fight with Bukauskas that got extended, not the highest of paces of fights. And Bukauskas does play, kind of an outside-based game, which Gamzatov does play, which I think does give some credence here. But in a 15-minute striking affair against a guy in Oleksiejczuk who's going to throw more at Gamzatov than I've ever seen from any past opponent, if he doesn't knock out Oleksiejczuk, I'm pretty confident that he's going to be the guy going forward, just doing more. And if his gas tank can sustain, which I think, at least in this type of a fight, assuming Gamzatov doesn't come out here and dive on legs, I think his gas will probably be fine. It's just that, to your point, the times that Oleksiejczuk's been on bottom, it just has not looked good in any stretch of the imagination. So it's like one of those spots where I think Oleksiejczuk's clearly the side at plus money, but if the guy who has the wrestling and grappling credentials, who doesn't wrestle historically, comes out here and wrestles right off the jump, I'm going to feel horrible. So I actually think it's one of the better live betting spots on the card. I just kind of want to see what the approach for Gamzatov is in general. And if it is extended, I want to see the pacing of Michal and what his gas tank is looking like. So that's kind of my take. I think Oleksiejczuk's the side, but I'd rather live bet it.
Okay. And that's a fair take. Live betting is a thing these days, and a lot of people have great success with it. So I'm glad you mentioned that here in this spot. Man, I'm at least glad you said that Oleksiejczuk is the side, because isn't he though? I mean, like, he is so clearly the side to me. If you're going to bet anybody, he's probably going to have more success winning minutes, that higher volume, but it just terrifies me, the chance that one takedown and that's it, it's over. Like, I don't think much of Shamil. I would love to fade Shamil with a plus 130 underdog line. That sounds like music to my ears, but I'm afraid that this guy can just trip over his own feet, end up on his back, and that's going to be the end of it.
It very well could be, which is why I don't really want to bet it pre-fight.
Okay. Well, all right. So I'm going to say Lord Oleksiejczuk bounces back. He'll be my pick to win this fight. We'll see if I sack up and have the balls to actually pull the trigger and bet it by Saturday, or maybe I'll follow Luke's example and look for an in-game position here on this one. The next fight should be another one that's a banger, if I'm being honest. Zaleski, a name that I feel like I haven't heard in quite some time, even though it hasn't actually been that long since he fought last. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos welcoming Benoit Saint-Denis to the UFC, a welterweight fight here. And by the way, I'm pretty proud of myself for the pronunciation on that one. I listened to some I believe they were French commentators, so I know that I'm saying it the right way and not just stumbling over myself like I usually do. Elizeu Zaleski is coming off a split loss to Muslim Salikov. A very well-respected fighter. Low volume a bit, but we all know he's got the goods. This man, they call him Capoeira for a reason. He's a KO machine. Big power in every single strike, spinning heel kicks, flying knees. He blitzes with punches when he charges you down. I mean, this guy is looking for the finish with every single thing he throws. He's capable of that explode and reload type of fight style, and you can't ever get him out of your face. He's dangerous late. I like everything from Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, and you're never out of it. Even if he's down, 2 rounds to none, in that third, he's still got that KO power ability to just kill somebody. He has a 52% takedown defense in this spot, and Benoit, which, by the way, I don't know if there are any Archer fans in the house, but all I can ever hear is Archer's voice going, Benoit balls, whenever I hear that name, so I apologize. 8-0, undefeated. They call this man the God of War, which there's only one God of War in my opinion, man. So the story behind it is he's actually a member of the French Special Forces, and they started calling him the God of War because he played the PlayStation God of War game, which one of my all-time favorite video game series. I absolutely love Kratos and the God of War series, and that's one of the things that helped get this man through being away on combat deployment, and then that name carried over into his MMA days. So I'll kind of forgive him for being the second God of War, because it's a bold move to come up on Davison like that. 7 of his 8 wins by submission. Kind of hard to find tape on this guy. Usually is with these debuting fighters with limited, experience and stuff like that. But man, this guy can wrestle. Good takedowns, blast double legs, physically strong, picks people up, puts them where he wants them, swings for the fences. He's another one of these guys that just does not care of getting his striking taken advantage of, because he wants to close the range. He wants to wrestle. So if he slips up, if somebody gets clipped and knocked to the ground, he is more than willing to go there because that's his wheelhouse. He's very good in scrambles. He advances position extremely quickly. I know he's fought a lower level of competition, but I mean a knife through butter type of advancing positions. And he hunts the back. He's another one of these guys that likes to backpack people. He's got a nasty squeeze on that rear naked choke. I think he's a BJJ brown belt. He posted a black and white picture for his belt, so had a hard time telling.
Purple belt.
Well, the last picture I saw was a purple, but then he posted one where he's got a new belt, and I think he said something about being promoted. So I believe he upgraded to brown, but don't quote me on that. Maybe he's just a purple, but I mean, he fights like a freaking black belt. He's got a nasty arm triangle, which is my favorite submission. So I already have a little bit of a connection with this guy. Man, the fact that the UFC set him up with a fighter like Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos for his debut speaks volumes about what they believe this kid is potentially capable of. And I have a very, very, tinfoil hat. I want to take him. I want to take Denis. I don't know why, but I feel like this is a spot where he could just show up and be an absolute monster. He's from the French Special Forces. Nothing he's going to see in a steel cage is going to scare him. Like, he is not going to be intimidated by the power of someone like Elizeu Zaleski. And I know that intimidation doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as a cold back on your head when you've been knocked out the night before. So he could still get knocked out, but he's got the exact type of game plan that he would need to stuff a guy like Elizeu Zaleski. I don't like betting undefeated fighters. I don't like betting UFC debutants, especially when they're taking this massive of a leap up in competition. But I think Benoit's legit. Luke, what do you think about this fight?
Can I swear on this show?
Absolutely. Have at it.
I think Zaleski fucks this guy up bad, in my opinion. I think this, if I'm being completely candid, I mean, you brought up a lot of good points. Like, I don't disagree that he seems like he's a really good wrestler, seems like he's a good grappler. But this probably is one of the biggest steps up in competition for a UFC debut I've seen in a long time.
Like ever, right?
Still like on moderately short notice, because he was supposed, I think Zaleski was supposed to fight Rakhmonov like a week before. And so like this fight for him's only been officially announced for months. So it's still like relatively shorter notice. But I just want to run through a little bit for Zaleski. I know there's been certain points where it hasn't been great for him. Lee clipped him, 2 or 3 times. But I mean, Lee, homeboy's out here about to fight Chimaev. So, right. There's that. Not to mention that fight was extremely competitive at distance outside of the times he was hurt. He just went to that split decision with Muslim Salikov. A lot of people thought he won that fight, myself included. Salikov is an incredibly difficult guy to look good against. Kunchenko, I think he handed Kunchenko his second pro loss, another guy that's very difficult to look good against. Knocks out Vendramini, hands Strickland, I think his first KO loss, beats a solid guy, Max Griffin, Lyman good. And then obviously bringing it to this matchup in something that's maybe more relevant and important. He did struggle with some takedowns at the early part of his career, but I'd say the best wrestler that he's fought in the UFC was a guy in Omari Akhmedov, who we know is very strong Dagestani archetype dude. Akhmedov went 3 for 7 on takedowns and only got like 1 minute of control time on him. Pretty much every single takedown, Zaleski was able to use the butterfly guard sweep, threaten leg locks, get out of all that stuff. Not really particularly easy to do on a guy in Akhmedov too. And I think it does need to be noted that Zaleski, despite kind of his capoeira background being known as a striker, the guy's a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Cristiano Marcelo, which is like legit lineage, like right above Royler Gracie. That guy doesn't hand out black belts prizes in Cracker Jack boxes. So Zaleski can grapple. He just uses it more for defensive purposes. We just don't see him shoot a lot of takedowns, so we don't see a lot of that part of his game. But the guy can defensively grapple. So obviously this guy is going to try to take him down. I'm not saying he can't take him down. I just doubt that he'll be able to slice through Zaleski's guard like butter when pretty much nobody has before. If Akhmedov can't hold this dude down, if Akhmedov can't pass him, now we're also talking, this was 5 years ago for Zaleski too. If he can't do that, I really struggle to see this kid coming in on short notice and being able to do it on such a big step up in competition. I think the levels in the striking here are absolutely gigantic. I think Zaleski knocks the kid out. Like I said, I don't hate the kid. I don't think he's a bum. I don't think he's a can. I just think it is a big ask on moderate short notice to make your debut against a guy in Zaleski. And if you even run through Zaleski's, UFC career, this is easily his easiest fight to date. And the guy's only minus 220. I think that's short. I think Zaleski's like 80% in this spot.
Wow. Okay. So I'm seeing a live dog, and Lucas saying that the line is not wide enough. Y'all love when me and my guests disagree. You got it tonight, folks. This is, man, this one's going to be so interesting to me. I feel like either guy could look like minus 1,000 in hindsight. It's classic striker versus grappler, and if Benoit gets going, like you mentioned, nobody's really been able to outclass Zaleski like that on the ground before. I feel like he's got the tools. He could be the one to do it. But that is a tall order. That is a tall ask, and it's a gigantic step up in competition. I totally get that. And that KO threat is always there. So, yeah, man, Elizeu Zaleski could be the one laying out the punishment there on Saturday. One of the big things is I had a hard time with this last week is that there was a lot of sizes that really caught me off. You look at these fighters facing off against each other, and the one that really stood out was Negumereanu and Ike Villanueva, where in my brain – they're the same size, and they're just going to play rock'em sock'em robots until somebody falls over. I like my plus 200. As soon as they faced off, it was like big bro, little bro. Like, that was not what I was hoping to back with my money. I want to see what these guys look like when they face off. It's a situation where when you've got a grappler who's going to be the much bigger guy, like if Benoit is larger than Elizeu Zaleski, I will be very, very tempted to take that stab on him here. And very much the opposite of that. If Benoit is smaller, if Elizeu turns out to just have the much more physical, large frame, then, I may tend more to agree with you. I know size isn't everything, but it does matter. And it matters in a big way when it comes to the grappling. Because if someone is not able to overpower a guy like Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, tall order, as we've mentioned a couple of times, then you're going to get killed on the feet when you fail your takedowns. So I think that's a pretty easy way for me to make a decision a little bit later on in the week. So I'm going to put a pin in it, but I'm very tempted on the dog here.
Best of luck if you take the shot.
Oh, man. There's some other spots on the card. So these first couple of dogs that I'm talking about, I don't know if I'm going to get there with them. Like, there's some other spots. This might be a card where I can make some money and not have to go chasing dogs that are untested, unproven. I don't know if I need to. So I don't know yet. All right, everybody. We have got 200 live viewers hanging out with us here on a Monday night. Thank you guys very much for spending the evenings with us. This is my guy, Luke, from Sparring with Reality Betting, the Club and Sub podcast. Make sure you give him a follow over there on Twitter, and make sure you support him. Thank him for jumping on and breaking these fights down with us. Our next fight to talk about is Albert Duraev taking on Roman Kopylov. And Kopylov is maybe one of the most disappointing prospects we have ever seen. He came in with some serious hype. 8-0, undefeated, looked like trash in his first fight in the UFC. Now, I know you're never as good as one single performance, so we got to give the kid a chance. But damn, everyone cooled off on him real quick. Albert Duraev, 14-3, fresh off the Contender Series round 1 finish. We are going to see some serious recency bias here in this spot. We just saw Albert looking like a beast. We just saw Roman in his last fight looking very disappointing, and that's going to lend itself to this betting line. Duraev is a minus 300 favorite. Like most of the favorites on this card, you can get Roman Kopylov as a plus 250 underdog. Duraev, I like this guy's leg kicks. Hard leg kicks. Really strong body lock. He's got nice sneaky trip takedowns. He can blast double if he needs to. He bullies people around the cage. Just very physical. And he floats in dominant position, Luke. I love to see how soft he is on top. You're not getting out from under this man if he gets a dominant position on you. He's got heavy pressure when he needs to, pin people down, and just pounds away. His ground and pound is nasty, and he's got a high work rate. When he grounds and pounds, it's not like 1-2 shots that just stabilized. Like, he is constantly hitting you when you're underneath him. This kid is gonna make Kopylov wrestle. if he's ready for anything, he's gonna need to put his singlet on. Roman hasn't fought since 2019. Former Glory kickboxer. That's his background coming into this thing, is striking. He does have an active range-finding type of jab. He does have fast hands. I like his combinations. But we've got a lot of questions about this kid and what he's capable of. In his UFC debut, he got taken down and choked out by Carl Roberson. And that's just not a good look. Like, if you're getting taken down by Karl Roberson, a guy who also is supposed to be a striker, you're maybe in for a world of hurt against a guy like Albert Duraev. I can't agree with the chalk. I can't agree more with the chalk on this one, Luke. I think this is Albert's fight to lose, if I'm being honest. And I know these young kids, they make improvements. You can't ever count them out. We could see a brand new version of Roman Kopylov, but we have no reason to expect that as of now. So I'm kind of thinking we fade him one more time with a Dagestani that we know is going to put him on his back.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Duraev's legit, to be honest. To your point, there might be some like recency bias on the line just based on like the Contender Series performance. There might be some like mindset, based that way. Not for me though. I think the flow and the steam towards him is completely justified. Even pre-Contender Series, the guys fighting over an ACB, an ACA formerly, probably one of the best promotions you can fight in outside of the States, to be honest. If we're talking about like strength of competition, that's usually the problem we have, gauging these new guys that come into the UFC. They're like, oh, this guy fought on this random Brazilian regional card or somewhere over in Albania. What does that mean? What does that mean? I will tell you right now, this guy has fought and beat legit guys. He's a 2-weight world champ over in ACB, which is an incredible feat to have coming in. He's beat a guy in Struce, very talented guy who could probably fight in the UFC. Beat Vasilevsky, he's a very good guy. He even beat Sergey Kondansko, who I think has fought in the UFC before. He at least fought in M1 for a long time too. So he's got some good W's on his record as well. Not only that, not only beating these guys, he is running good guys to boot. And obviously we saw him run homeboy Bittencourt on the Contender Series as well. You kind of touched on Kopylov, more so of your outside tempted kickboxer archetype, kind of needs that pretty based lower striking affair to kind of succeed. More of your sniper has some power. But what I noticed, at least from Duraev on the outside, he's not the greatest striker in the world, but I think he manages distance pretty well. You touched on the leg kicks. I think his hands are pretty decent. He largely avoids, the big winging shots pretty well. Generally manages that distance pretty well. I don't think he's some elite level striker, but I've seen him outstrike better guys than him perceivably on paper who are of a higher caliber. Don't really see why he can't either in this spot with Kopylov's volume tending to be pretty lower and kind of needing that outside range game to really succeed, where I think Duraev can get inside here as well. And then you touched on the wrestling as well. This dude's top game is, I don't want to say elite yet, but it's pretty close to that from what I've seen. When you combined a wrestling from his base and actually coming from a general grappling based background too, that is a nightmare of a human being to build as a mixed martial artist coming out of that Caucasus-based region. So I think the guy's good. He was coming off a bit of a layoff in that Contender Series fight. Obviously, answered some questions there in terms of how he was going to look. I think it's a great spot for him, to be honest.
I couldn't agree more, man. I was one of the first people that when we did the breakdown for the Contender Series, I was like, we don't know yet. We got to wait. We got to see. It's been so long. Like I'm having a super big question about whether or not this guy is going to come in looking anything. And I know, again, he didn't fight the best level of competition, but he runs through these people, man. Like, he doesn't just beat people, he destroys them. And that's what you're looking for. When you've got a guy that's on the regional scene and he's not fighting the best level of competition, is he squeezing by them? Is he just barely getting through these fights, or is he wrecking them? And that's what Duraev does, is he absolutely destroys people. So yeah, man, I'm all in for at least this fight on the Duraev train. I think he's a parlay piece, and that's probably what I'll do with him. I'll probably toss him in a 2 or a 3 leg parlay, something like that this week, and he's going to be one of the pieces I do tend to target. Glad we agree on that one. That was one of my ones that I kind of had circled. So at least you're not telling me Kopylov's going to come out here and knock him out.
It's pretty low percentage, in my opinion.
I would agree. All right, man. Next fight up, Zubaira Tukhugov taking on Ricardo Ramos. What a fight. I love this fight. This might be the sleeper fight of the night, in my opinion, man. There's a lot going on here. There are some high stakes in this particular spot. Ricardo Ramos 15-3, Zubaira Tukhugov 19-5. And Ricardo Ramos, this guy has 3 losses. All of them are by finish. And I think the first thing I need to get out of the way is that when he loses, it is ugly. I worry about the chin of Ricardo Ramos. We have seen him hurt a bunch of times. We've seen him KO'd twice. And when he got KO'd, it was bad. It was really bad. But he's a pretty slick striker. He actually has some good boxing, some technical Muay Thai. I like what he does on the feet. You're just always afraid he's going to get touched. Now, he changes levels, and when he does his best work, it's on the mat. He's got some slick jiu-jitsu. He does a lot of good work with his body lock and his trip takedowns. He's not much of a wrestler. He's more of your classic jiu-jitsu player, so he's not going to overpower anybody or blast double them or anything like that. And he is absolutely deadly on the backpack. If he can get on your back, you are in a very, very bad position. Zubaira Tukhugov on the flip side, this guy not gassed. I apologize. He's a member of AKA, training with Khabib. He's one of these high-powered Russians that's got a big spotlight on him. He's more of a striker, very light on his feet, nice footwork, and explosive power, man. This guy, the best thing I can describe him as is he fights like a coiled snake. When he counters, he unloads, and it is big-time power shots constantly. He's a bit low volume, and that is something that worries me a little bit because if he doesn't land that bomb, he'll be losing the minutes. And he really needs to get the respect with the power, with the takedowns, for him to steal the rounds that kind of way or get the finish. His best weapon is that big power right hand. Now, Ricardo Ramos has a 4-inch reach advantage in this spot, averages 3.1 strikes landed per minute, but absorbs 3.6. So he has been outlanded by his opponents in the UFC so far. Zubaira, 2.54 significant strikes landed per minute, absorbing 2.53. So almost exactly even, 1-for-1 punches. That's concerning to me. If this fight stays standing, if Ricardo Ramos cannot get this fight to the ground, then I think he's going to eat a bomb. I think I'm in the Zubaira Tukhugov by knockout camp just because of that chin. I don't think I could trust Ricardo Ramos to stick to a game plan, to be silky smooth and avoid this guy's power on the feet for 15 straight minutes. And I don't think he's got the wrestling he needs to get it to the ground. He might be able to out jiu-jitsu this guy if he could get it to the mat, get into a dominant position, sweep, reverse, that kind of thing. But I don't know that he's going to be physically strong enough to pull that off or keep him there if he wants it to be there, considering how good of a wrestler Zubaira Tukhugov is when he really wants to be. How do you feel about this fight, Luke?
Yeah, this is probably one of the more interesting fights on the card of a lot of obviously really good ones. I think it's the second time it's being booked. These guys were supposed to fight back in March as well. I'm glad it didn't completely get scrapped and they decided to put it back together. I think you can make a decent argument either way. I think you can say it's a really close fight either two. Tukhugov does, kind of have that big explosive power right hand, but really the theme with him though is, if he doesn't blast guys, he's in a lot of close fights. He's been to 4 splits, and I think it's interesting to note just based on his style how this translates. You're like, okay, the guy forced a split with Renato Moicano, who's obviously, a top 15 guy. That's awesome. Well, he also went to split with Felipe Nova, who is, not a UFC caliber fighter. So really, that's kind of how you have to look at it, is that just based on his style, it's going to lead him to be in close fights regardless. And despite him, coming from, a wrestling background, I know he's kind of primarily more of a striker, but he does have that Russian grind in him. Mm-hmm. Really, outside of that Lerone Murphy fight, he's really actually struggled with control per takedown. He lands a decent amount, but guys have been able to pop up on him as well. And he is the definition of your lay and pray guy. He is not hunting submissions. He's not throwing ground strikes. And as a result, we've seen in multiple of these fights, judges not score his takedowns, even if he's getting some control. We've seen judges go multiple other ways in his fights to boot. So I think that's interesting here, coupled with obviously Ramos being a solid jiu-jitsu player. His ground is pretty underrated. There is definitely some merit to Tukhugov just grinding him out. I do think that's in play, but I do think the striking's pretty close. I think the activity of Ramos is just a little bit more consistent. You touched on the fact that he does have some range-based advantages in this fight. The concern is I don't like people who throw spinning shit against people who might be trying to take them down, which honestly is more what terrifies me than him getting smoked by Tuhugov. I'm more concerned that he throws a spinning hook kick or something and Tuhugov shoots and gets in on his hips that way. But if he just puts the spinning shit away, fights more technical, fights more composed, I do actually think Ramos is the better striker here, and he can just outpoint. I think it's a close fight because of that. I think Ramos is the value side, but I would like a little bit more meat on the bone to get involved personally. It's just, for me, I couldn't lay minus 170 on Tuhugov because, like I said, if he doesn't blast Ramos, which, is in play, but I don't think it's like the craziest of high percentages. If he doesn't, are you going to feel great about your minus 170 ticket is kind of what I would ask. I personally probably wouldn't. I could be wrong.
Okay.
He, like 30-27's the dude, but traditionally, that's not how he's really winning. Even in his decisions, they're not necessarily dominant.
Fair enough. That's a very, very fair take, man. I think if this thing goes to the judges, minus 170 is a bad look. But I think the line might be there given the chin issues and the knockout power. I think that's kind of more what's extending this line just a little bit. And I do kind of lean to that side myself, like I said. And you mentioned the spinning shit. But Luke, how many spinning shit guys ever put it away? Like give me an example of a guy that you were like, why the hell did he throw the spinning hook kick for no reason? And when was the last guy you can think of that stopped doing it?
That's a good point.
I don't have a single one. It's like if there's anybody out there that likes to throw those damn spinning attacks out of nowhere, they just never stop. They can't help themselves. So yeah. I don't think we're ever fixing that. Mr. X, shout out. Thank you very much for the donation, my friend. Says karma for father's plan. And I think that, Luke, you might have nailed it, man, because if this is that big moment, like these Russians are going to need to win. Like they're all on the big stage. It's a Russian card. It's a spotlight type of showcase spot. If he throws spinning shit like that and gets body locked and dragged to the floor, like it could just be over. That could be the first time this guy wins banking rounds wrestling like most of his Russian compadres do, in the history of his career. So I don't know. I'm definitely in the Tuhugov camp. I think he gets this win here. I cannot trust Ricardo Ramos's chin. That's the biggest thing, man. Like I cannot for the life of me put my money behind this guy, especially when you can see the type of heat coming off of Tuhugov when he throws. I don't know. Not sure what I want to do with this one just yet. Obviously, I'm in the Tuhugov camp. I agree with you that maybe there's a little bit of value on the dog side of this thing, but at the end of the day, and that's the best way I can put it.
To be honest.
You know what? That might just be the solution, is just call it a day, leave it behind, pass on it, don't struggle so hard with it. I will tell you this. Tuhugov by knockout will be in my little degenerate 3-leg parlay sprinkle that I do. If nothing else, I will have that leg in that parlay to give me a little something on this one. All right. Next fight up, maybe the one the chat is most excited about in the world. Amanda Ribas returns, taking on my girl Verna Jandiroba. And I love this fight, Luke. I cannot wait to talk through this fight with you because I have a little bit of a hot take in this spot, man. Amanda Ribas is 10-2, coming off a bad knockout loss to the future champion, Verna Jandiroba, 17-2, coming off a nice bounce-back win where she won by snapping a girl's arm. Ribas, very aggressive, tries to move forward on you, strikes her way into range, looks the level change, gets the legs, likes to attack the legs from the outside, good body lock. She likes to do the trip takedown thing, and she's just nasty on the floor. High-level BJJ, positionally sound from top position, good ground and pound. Her striking is still a bit of a work in progress, and this is another spot where just a questionable chin. This girl does not like to get hit, and when she does get hit, she does not react well. She keeps that chin up in the air, and she is there to be touched. She panic wrestles, man. When she gets hurt, she she dives on a leg. Like, caution to the winds, throwing herself in there. Not a very good process, I guess, when she's hurt. She is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage in this spot, which could be a problem for Virna. But Virna, on the flip side, very physically strong. I mean, she is built like a monster. Good footwork. She showcased in her last fight the levels that are striking is jumping. Very snapping strikes. She also is one of these fighters that likes to rely on the power punches to get herself into range. She tries to grapple from there. Very strong in the clinch positions, and underrated power in that right hand of hers, man. She's got a heavy right hand. She is willing to jump guard and has given away a couple of rounds off of her back. That's the one thing, you're spinning shit with Ricardo Ramos. If he would just put it away, if Virna would just quit pulling guard for me, that would be the solution, because I honestly think that in her last fight against Mackenzie Dern, it was 1-1. And I feel like they credited Mackenzie Dern with a takedown when Virna jumped guard there in that third round, and that may have been one of those little baby deciding factors that cost her the entire fight. So need Virna to stop pulling guard for sure. But how can you argue it? She's a BJJ black belt. She's aggressive off her back. She's got powerful hips. She's got a great armbar, man. She is the definition of women's armbar from guard. Like, if anyone's going to do it to you, it's going to be Jandiroba, and she goes for no less than like 3 armbars per fight. So there's always a chance. One thing I do want to point out, Virna Jandiroba held Mackenzie Dern 0-5 on takedowns. And everyone wants to talk about how Dern's wrestling has improved and how much better she's been getting. Like, got to put a little bit of shine on my girl Virna for that one. The only concern is Ribas's takedowns on the other side of this thing. She's got a pretty good takedown rating. But I found a little hole that I want to poke in her offensive wrestling. Her opponents have been Emily Spitfire Whitmire, who has a 70% takedown defense, Randa Marcos, who has a 52% takedown defense, Paige Van Zant, who has a 34% takedown defense, and Mackenzie Dern, who has the aforementioned 0% takedown defense rating because she doesn't care. She will happily play off of her back. So only 2 of her opponents have over 50%. One of those, Marcos, only by 2%. Her opponents do not have good takedown defense ratings. And Whitmire is maybe the biggest choke artist we've ever seen in this division. She is more than likely cut from the UFC. I don't buy that 70% takedown defense rating one bit. So I think there's a bit of an it's a little over-exaggerated, I guess, Amanda Ribas's takedown defense rating, in my opinion. Man, I think we got a live dog on our hands. I think Virna Jandiroba is completely live in this spot. She can submit anybody. And honestly, if this ends up being a striking match on the feet because Ribas can't take down Jandiroba, that right hand is going to be a problem. She lumped up Mackenzie Dern when Dern decided to box with her. I'm not confident that Ribas can take that kind of a beating and keep on coming. So I'm definitely in kind of the dog or pass camp on this one, Luke. How do you feel about this fight?
So pretty strong take on the other side. I actually bet Ribas here at -140. I think it's pretty much one-way traffic on the feet for Ribas. I think I think she's exponentially the better striker, to be candid. She's very active, lands over 4 strikes per minute at a 44% accuracy. 52% of her fight time is spent at distance, and she has a distance strike ratio of 2.92 strikes per minute, which is a phenomenal ratio. Yes, she's shown some defensive issues at times. She has been knocked out in her 2 losses, going back to the little Mimi one against Viana back on the regionals. And then obviously hindsight, getting knocked out by Marina Rodriguez, who's a top 5, WMMA striker, in my opinion, who I think we know is elite at this point. I don't think there's too much to take away from that. Not to mention that Amanda Ribas clearly won the first round there and pretty much took her down and grinded her out. And actually, Marina Rodriguez only went 5 for 25 on distance strikes too. So it's not like she was just piecing Ribas, for the better part of like 8 minutes or so in the fight. She caught her, fair. I don't take too much away from the loss hindsight personally, because I do think Marina is just that good of a striker. But then if you actually look at Ribas's defensive numbers, they're actually very, very good. She only eats 1.78 strikes absorbed per minute and defends at 71%. Those are pretty elite numbers. I know her sample size isn't like large and she hasn't been fighting, top tier girls, but your striking defense numbers really don't get much better than that. And what I've seen from Virna on the feet, I just really don't like, to be honest. Like, she's been aggressive, and whatnot, but she got outlanded by Mackenzie Dern, who I don't values her striking at all. Like, her boxing is improved a little bit. She even hurt Verna in the 3rd round. So if you're getting outlanded by Mackenzie Dern, I don't see why Ribas can't do that and then do some more of it. So I think the striking's pretty one-way traffic on Ribas, in my opinion. The ground is definitely where there is some credence to Jandiroba, but Ribas's takedown defense is pretty good in the time she's been taken down. She's pretty active to threaten submissions, potentially find sweeps. So I do think she's fine if she does get taken down. The concern is if she just maybe plays guard a little bit too much, but in general, I think her takedown defense is pretty good coming from that judo background. And I think she'll be able to stuff, if not all, the large majority of Verna's takedowns, where I think Verna has to get takedowns in this fight to win. And Ribas is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well, so she's very competent on the mat too. I think it's just important to note that Verna Jandiroba hasn't really fought any good strikers, in my opinion. If you go back to her Invicta days, pretty much fought all grapplers who she's been a better grappler than. So she submitted those girls in the UFC. I just don't think she's fought any good strikers. I think Amanda Ribas is the best striker she's fought, who has a lot of diverse tools, who is a very good grappler in her own right to boot. I think, Ribas around 60% is short, and Ribas is actually a good bet.
Okay. All right. Little bit of a hot take on my side of things, apparently. Man, I can pick up what you're putting down. I agree with what you're saying. Mallory Martin, Felice Herrig, obviously not really the most impressive wins. Went the distance with Carla Esparza, banked that experience. Mackenzie Dern. I'm kind of surprised to hear your take on Mackenzie Dern striking, because I'll be honest, man, when I talked about that fight, all I heard was how much better Mackenzie Dern's boxing has been and has become. So I'm a little surprised to hear you on that one.
I mean, I'm not burying the girl or anything, or at least I'm not trying to. I do think her boxing has improved, but it's still really not technical in any stretch of the imagination. She still kind of has the bowling-like tendency she did back on the regionals. She's tightened it up a bit where she'll pop out a jab here and there, but she's incredibly hittable. She doesn't get her hands back up. I think she's just more aggressive and throws volume than her being a good striker, where if I'm to parallel that with Ribas is exponentially more technical, but also higher output with over 4 strikes than permitted a good accuracy. So,
okay. Well, man, you're one of the people in the world when it comes to MMA betting whose opinions I respect the most. I absolutely hear what you're saying, and that terrifies me a little bit. Like I said, I haven't pulled the trigger on anything so far besides the one bet this week, so that does scare me a little bit. I'm not blind to the fact that Ribas is the more technical striker. I just, man, the way she wobbles when she gets hit, when she gets hurt, the way that she stanky legs over there, I'm like, man, all it's going to take is 1 or 2 good shots from Verna Jandiroba. But we are in the big cage. This is the Abu Dhabi UFC pay-per-view, so there's going to be some more room to work. And that's something I guess that we probably need to take into account. In the short cage, where there's a little bit less room, less space for her to move and work, that could maybe favor Verna Jandiroba a little bit more. I also do think there's something to be said for the physicality of Verna. If she does end up getting the takedown, she's a solid BJJ black belt herself. I do think she can just blanket Ribas. I don't see a submission coming from either of these women. Do you think, Luke, that Ribas is finishing via strikes?
She could. Like I said, Mackenzie Dern hurt her. I think it's in play. I more so see a volume-based decision for Ribas, though.
I'm glad that you mentioned that again, because that was a point that I actually wanted to kind of touch with you on here. I rewatched that fight, man, and that's one of those ones where I didn't know what the officials were talking about, because I know she got hit with a big shot in the 3rd round against Mackenzie Dern, but she never looked hurt to me. Like, the guys commentating were like losing their minds about how wobbled and how hurt she was. And Verna, she got backed up against the cage, but then she just kind of looked up and looked around and like kind of went back to work. I don't actually know if she was hurt there. You know what I mean? Like, I think she might have got caught off guard. It was a good shot, don't get me wrong, but I think it may have been a little bit much to say that she got rocked. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, she wasn't like on skates or anything. She wasn't doing the stanky leg out there, but I do think she cracked her pretty good, and she was clearly not there, at least for a little bit, trying to get her wits back about her. Just my take, though.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. All right, man. You know what? Maybe fight goes the distance. Might not be a bad angle to take on this one. It looks like it's about minus 155. I know both these women are dangerous, but we've also seen where the respect plays in, both sides having finishing power. We see kind of a more muted offense from both people, a little more risk adverse. What do you think about maybe this thing going over?
I just pulled up fight odds. It looks like it's minus 220 to go the distance.
Yeah. Well, I need to refresh my page apparently because it's showing me minus 155 at 5 dimes. Let me refresh. Might have already just been hammered. Oh, wow. Yeah, yep. Okay. Over 2.5 is minus 255. Fight goes the distance. I see minus 195.
Yeah, that's a little too high for me, but
yeah, that opener got steamed. It looks like minus 155 to minus 195 since we started the show. So yay. All right. Well, never mind. I guess I will mull on that a little bit more. I'm still a little tempted on Virna Jandiroba. And hey, shout out to the chat. Somebody did say, don't worry about it, Clint. A broken clock is right twice. So, maybe that's just me here. Maybe I'll just keep on going with my broken ass clock predictions and ride with it. We'll see what happens. But
Virna's a good grappler, though. Man, don't get it twisted. I'm not downplaying her grappling. She's a good grappler. I don't think it's like a steal spot for Ribas or anything. I just think, her probably 66% is probably correct.
That's fair. I just, man, I think one thing I'm having here is Virna's kind of my dark horse. Like, I just feel like she's super underrated. She gets counted out in every single fight, and she's always in every single fight. You know what I mean? So I just think, she's improving. She's getting better. She fights hard. She's strong. Her striking is very obviously getting better. I just think that she's going to steal a couple of fights that people don't see her coming in, and very soon. This one might not be it. You know what I mean? But I just think that she's underrated.
If you like her, don't listen to me. Take the shot, bro.
Well, I'm more talking to myself, I guess, right now than necessarily because, like I said, I wasn't ready to pull the trigger on this pre-show. If I felt that confidently about her, I would have pulled the trigger and bet it already. So I'm still very much on the fence. I'm not sure what I want to do with this one. And like we said a couple times already, man, sometimes the best option is just a pass. There's some other really good spots on the card, I feel like. So again, I might not go dog hunting too much on these little puny little puppies that are about plus 120, plus 125.
Puny puppies. I've never heard
you like that.
That's solid. I might
That's a new one.
That.
Yeah, you have every right, man. We're on the show together. I'm not going to trademark it. You're welcome to use it. Puny puppies. Next fight up, man. Potential trap spot, maybe? Magomed Ankalaev taking on Vulcan. No time Ozdemir. And I said on last week's show, man, I've got a weakness for bad fighters that hit hard. That's like my thing. If you're a bad MMA fighter, but you've got some knockout power, I just want to cheer my ass off for you for some reason. So I absolutely fell in love with Vulcan Ozdemir when he came on the scene. And I had to pump the brakes, man. Like, he's one of these, okay. Lay it all out for Vulcan Ozdemir. He's a guy that loses to the best. Like, his losses are not losses you can be ashamed of. He lost to the champions. He lost to the number one contenders, guys that have fought for the title. And then anybody who's not on his level, he destroys. He's knocked out some lower level competition, and that's just what he does. But they call him No Time. We talk about his power. He lumped up Jiri pretty good, in his last fight against Jiri Prochazka. He had his face red, he was doing some damage with those shots. But I don't think Jiri was ever hurt in that fight. Now, Jiri's also a freak of nature. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way first and foremost. But the knockout wins for Vulcan Ozdemir were over some of the chinniest fighters in the division. I mean, Misha Serkinov, Jimmy Manawa, like, these guys are guys that get knocked out by everybody. So I feel like the No Time moniker for Vulcan is a little bit false. It's a cool name, don't get me wrong, but he's not the power puncher, at least at the UFC level, that we kind of expect him to be. Magomed Ankalaev, one of the hottest prospects we've ever seen in this weight class. This guy is well-rounded and does everything. He's capable of being your classic Russian grinder. He can grapple. He can shoot takedowns, but he's a slick striker, man. He's one of these guys that has natural power. He's got fast hands at the division, and everything he throws can hurt you, but he's not swinging for the fences. He's not loading up on it. He's one of these guys that has no problem just going 60%, 60%, 60%, and it just starts to wear on people. He's got a super sneaky lead power hook that he likes to catch people with as he's fading away. And he averages 3.41 significant strikes per minute, absorbing 1.78. So he's outstriking his opponents by damn near 2 significant strikes per minute. Volkan Oezdemir, coming off that bad knockout loss to Tagir, did the right thing, took a year off to recover. He does have good hands. He does have solid boxing. But man, he gasses himself out. He goes for the kill, and he doesn't know how to stop himself. Like, he always goes too hard when he takes the opportunity, and then he just kind of falls apart in the second and then the third rounds. I feel like this is a spot where Magomed Ankalaev works Volkan Oezdemir, and maybe he gets a decision win. Maybe he finishes him late. But I simply think that this is a tale of two fighters heading separate directions. But I know the world is on Magomed Ankalaev, and I do know that Volkan Oezdemir hits hard, so it's hard to lay massive chalk in a spot where a guy can close the show at literally in any point in time. We've got a 335 favorite in Magomed Ankalaev, plus 260 on Volkan Oezdemir. How do you see this one playing out, Luke?
Yeah, I've always been like a huge fan of Ankalaev. I think the guy's always had promise. He's always very good. But I'm actually taking the dog shot on Volkan in this spot. I didn't think I'd be betting against Ankalaev in a second, but this price is just disrespectful to Oezdemir, in my opinion, and this is coming from someone who's, kind of an Ankalaev truther, and I say it for a few reasons. I mean, if you run through Ankalaev's rap sheet in the UFC, I mean, yeah, he's largely performed good, but I think he's kind of had some cupcakes in there. Prachnow's not very good. Abreu's gotten cut. Longiambula is probably on the verge of getting cut. Kudalaba, obviously, at least at that point, 1 round, power puncher, really no gas tank, gonna kind of just swing at him. I know you might say there's some parallels to Volkan, but I have some counters to that personally.
He didn't fight that game plan very well either, if I'm being honest. Ankalaev, in either fight, didn't come in with a very good game plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then I guess here's a big reason actually why I'm making the bet on Oezdemir. That Krylov fight for Ankalaev was very concerning, despite him winning a unanimous decision there. He clearly got outstruck in the first round by Krylov, who's actually a grappler and got outlanded at distance, 45-29. He pretty much had to resort to the wrestling in the second and third rounds to squeak that fight. So for a guy I've always kind of classified as, this who's excellent with his distance management, which I still think it's very, very good. I kind of did like a double take back on what my stance was on that. Not that it's overtly changed. It's just looking at the guys he's fighting. They just haven't been very good. I just don't think there's really many parallels between, Prachniow, Abreu, Longiambula, Kudalaba, to be honest, where, in fighting a guy in Volkan, to your point, since coming into the UFC, has been fighting nothing but perennial top 15 level type of competition. Obviously, the record isn't great on the rap sheet, but him getting ran on the ground by DC, I don't think there's really, much to knock on him for that. DC's probably the best wrestler in the history of the 205-pound division. And, he actually put up a lot of resistance to some of those early takedowns. It was just the chain wrestling of DC that really got to him, but nonetheless, some struggles on bottom there. Looked decent against Anthony Smith, and then Anthony Smith kind of jumped on his back when he got a little tired late. Really competitive fight with Dominic Reyes, and that's really the only time, or I should say that's the most significant, distance strikes he's ever been outlanded by, and that was Dominic Reyes, which was still only 11. So I think that needs to be noted. Like, he's not going out here and just getting worked at distance, and we're talking about elite top 5 level 205 guys. In DC, Dominic Reyes, Alexander Rakic, Yuri Prochazka. The Rakic fight was incredibly close too, which he obviously, squeaked a decision there. Won the first round against Yuri, in my opinion. He hurt Yuri, in my opinion, then got blasted in the second. So once again, kind of similar to Amirkhani, not from a stylistic, consideration at all. This is a very big plus number on a guy who is proven, who's battle tested, who can have competitive fights with elite level competition. This is Ankalaev's toughest test to date, as touched on in his toughest test to date prior against Krylov. He dropped the first round to a guy who isn't a great striker by any means, who's just aggressive, throws a lot of shots, gets in your face. And that's what won Nikita Krylov that first round over Ankalaev. So the main two concerns for Volkan are that, yes, he has slowed down in some extended fights. Yes, the times he has been on the ground hasn't looked great, but Volkan stuffs takedowns at 80%, which is a very, very good mark. It's not like, guys shoot in on him and he's going down. I mean, 80%, that's a very solid and reputable takedown defense mark. And translating that to Ankalaev, despite coming, out of that Caucasus-based region and having, combat sambo background to boot, he's not your Russian going out there and diving on legs for 15 minutes. He only lands a little over one takedown per 15 minutes, only gets them at a 33% clip, only attempts roughly about 3 per fight. That's not a lot of takedowns. Now, if you told me that Ankalaev was going to come out here and, shoot 7-8 takedowns, would I have this take? And maybe he does, and then I lose my bet and I look terrible anyway. And he just grinds out Volkan. Volkan gets tired. But once again, take is in relation to the price tag on a very battle-tested guy who's shown he can have competitive fights with elite level competition in Ankalaev's biggest step up to date, who's not a guy who's not overtly high output, kind of plays the Russian coast game against a guy in Volkan who's gonna get after him. And so I really want to see how he reacts to that. Against the best fighter he's fought to date. So do I think, Volkan should be favored? No, but I think this line is pretty wide and just disrespectful to Volkan, in my opinion. Ankalaev could snipe him, could put him out. Ankalaev might be able to wrestle him, beat him that way. But, I actually grabbed plus 280 on Volkan. And that to me is just off. It's a bet. Once again, I'm willing to lose, even though I have a little bit more on it. I got 1.5 units on him at plus 280. Like I said, man, that Krylov fight's very disconcerting to me. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm fine with it. I'm happy with the price I got. If he can beat his toughest test to date and cover, a minus 350 price tag, so be it. But plus 280 on Volkan's nuts to me.
I absolutely respect the take, Luke. I like it. Man, like I said, I opened up maybe the trappiest line on the card. Like, I had a feeling that you'd probably be willing to take the dog shot on this one here, and I don't hate it at all. I get exactly what you're saying. It's a big step up in competition for him, and while I think Ankalaev is the goods, while I think he is legit, you're absolutely right that he's taking on his toughest test to date and a guy who has stood with absolutely some of the best. So not a situation that you necessarily want to be laying that kind of a price tag with. I do want to shout out, nice name, I Love Clint Baby in the chat. What about this over 1.5? This could be one of those sneaky heavyweight 1.5s, because if these guys are respectful of each other's power, if they take their time, hell, if Ankalaev grapples a little bit, like, are you seeing Volkan doing the no time thing and getting the KO? Or are you seeing Volkan working his way through this fight and going rounds with Magomed Ankalaev? Do you think the over is maybe an alternative?
Actually, I don't hate the over, to be honest. We have seen
Ankalaev
hurt. We have seen Ankalaev hurt and wobbled on a few occasions. Obviously, never been knocked out, to my knowledge. So I don't think he's like invincible per se. And just given how easy Krylov was able to close distance on him, Volkan hits hard. So him knocking out Ankalaev is very in play. But yeah, I guess I think the price was like minus 160. I don't hate it. I think it could very well be a very sweaty, over 1.5 at points.
Aren't they all, though?
Yeah, usually they are if they're 1.5, right? But to me, the value side is with Volkan.
Okay, man, I love it. I absolutely love it. And this is one where I am not too sold on the side. I do think Ankalaev should be favored. I do think Ankalaev probably gets the win, but one thing that maybe it was Ion Cutelaba, but it's just ringing, like pinging between my ears back and forth. Somebody leading up to a fight said he is not good at boxing range. And it just has resounded with me ever since I heard it, that I'm like, holy shit, Ankalaev is going to face one of these legitimate boxers in the UFC. And that's when we're going to have the chance to fade him. And this might be that spot, man, because if he can't do it, or if he can't take it in boxing range, Volkan Oezdemir is the guy that's going to test that. Volkan Oezdemir is the guy that's going to test that chin. He's got that high work rate. He averages I've got it right here. Volkan Oezdemir does average 5.03 significant strikes landed per minute. Now, it takes 4.24, so that is a little concerning that he gets hit all that often, but he is much more active than Magomed Ankalaev is. He does have a much higher work rate that, he could, if he survives, he could outwork Magomed Ankalaev for a couple rounds and potentially get a decision. And then if, like we're talking about, he's got a boxing advantage, maybe he does clip him. Maybe he does hurt him, and we see the return of no time. I don't know. You may be right, man. We might have a very live dog here in this spot.
Yeah, I'm willing to pay up to find out. I guess we'll see. I could look really stupid hindsight, but it's one of those bets where the price is right to me to find out.
You know what, man? And I'm glad you said that. That's perfectly fine to look stupid on these types of big dogs, because what a lot of people don't understand, and this is a bigger fight card, so I hope some people listen to this, is when it comes to dog hunting, especially in the UFC or in MMA in general, like if you're taking a plus 300 underdog, you've only got to win that bet 1 out of 4 times to break even. So people look at me and they see that I just updated my record today, actually. I broke the 30 unit mark for 2021. Very proud to say that. But I have over 500 bets for 2021 this year, man. And I have won about 160 of them. But I have a positive record. Now, I am not the best sports bettor, and I've never claimed to be the best sports bettor. I like to have some fun. I don't do things as tight as some people like yourself that takes things a bit more seriously than I do. But what I think I've proven is that when you take those value shots, you're getting these fighters that are 4 and 5 to 1 at the right times in the right places. You only have to hit 1 out of 4 to be profitable betting plus 300 underdogs. So yeah, man, you might look stupid. Volkan Oezdemir might get flatlined in the second round, and that could look like historically your worst bet to date. But if you're picking the right spots, if you're reading the right signs, and you keep making those same good bets, eventually they profit over time. And that's what a lot of people who are maybe less experienced in betting need to kind of understand about these dog shots. So I love it, man. I love the dog shot. I love that you've got the balls to stand in front of everybody in this spot with one of the most hyped favorites at 205 we've seen in a long time, and fade him under the spotlights. I absolutely love it.
We're going to see. I'm going to need my blood pressure medication for this one, probably.
All right, man. I may end up rocking with you there by Saturday. I don't know. We'll see. Still got time to figure it out. What I've noticed recently, man, is when I've been saying I like the favorite, they should win, the dog is the value side. That's when those favorites lose. Like, that's when the dog is the one that actually comes through and wins. When I'm like, man, the favorite should win, so I'm just going to parlay them, or, like some shit like that. Like, that's when the dogs show up, because there obviously was value on the dogs and the line was obviously wide. So I'm kind of getting those vibes here in this spot. I don't know.
Yeah, and last point, and I guess we'll move on real quick, but you brought up a good point in terms of taking the dog shots. If you're betting a plus 300, you only got to hit that 1 out of every 4 times to break even. That's why I think especially when you're taking these bigger dog shots, I think the most important thing you have to establish if you're going to take it, are you happy with the number? I think that's the most important thing, because if you are, and you say, I don't think this guy can cover a -3 something price tag even in a win, it's not necessarily about the individual bet. It's the spot. Because let's say Ankalaev goes out there and squeaks at 29-28. Will I feel horrible about Oezdemir at plus 280? Probably not. And really what that means is I'm just making good reads long term. To your point, if I'm betting that big of a number, I can be right, 4 out of 10 times, and I'm making hella money on those spots. I'm still wrong more often than I'm right, but I'm still making money on it. So I thought you brought up a good point there with when you're taking these bigger plus numbers. You don't need to win, every day at the office. You don't even need to win at 50% to make money. It's just, you have to feel good about the number that you're getting.
Absolutely, man. And I guess the last thing that I want to add to it before we move on is you don't just rapid fire. Like, you got to pick your spots. You're not betting every single 300 dog on the board, obviously. Like, you've got to find the right ones and find those sweet spots to get there. Anyway, we will move on, man. Nice little betting lesson there for everybody. Jing Liang Li, one of the hardest names for me to say, taking on my boy Khamzat Chimaev. Y'all didn't know. I need the chat to understand recognize I have a 100% betting rate on Khamzat Chimaev, and I am going to put that record on the line on Saturday. He has had 3 fights in the UFC, Luke, and so far I have read the man to perfection. I had him by submission in his first win when he choked the dude out. I had him inside the distance in the second one, and then I took him by KO specifically in the third. I am 3 for 3 and doing specific finish props on Khamzat Chimaev. So that's something you're going to want to monitor very, very closely on Saturday. Everybody, be on the edge of your seats for this one, because I have yet to decide how I'm going to attack this fight since the prop numbers haven't come out yet. We've talked a couple times about steps up in competition on this card, man. Holy hell. Is Khamzat Chimaev taking a step up? Now, he's coming off of that knockout win of Gerald Meerschaert where he killed the man with a single punch. I mean, it was quite literally the first punch of the fight that he threw that knocked out Gerald Meerschaert. This man is deadly everywhere. 100% finish rate, 4.67 takedowns per 15 minutes, 75% takedown accuracy. He just runs through people. I mean, the high caliber Khabib style wrestling, he just flows effortlessly with violence between ground and pound and submissions. He will pound you until you expose your back and then sink in the rear naked choke. If you defend that rear naked choke, it's back to elbows. Like, he just doesn't stop. You really have to pick your poison when you're underneath this man, because he's going to get you with one or the other. Now, the Lee's coming off a big knockout win over Santiago Ponzinibbio. And you know what? I kind of poo-pooed that a little bit. I was like, he fought an older fighter. You know, he fought a guy that had been on a long layoff. I kind of counted out Santiago Ponzinibbio. And then he looked fine his next fight. Like, Ponzinibbio came back and looked great his next time around. So in hindsight, that win looks pretty damn good. And I know the big one that we need to focus on, though, is the Neil Magny fight. The Leech struggled in the grappling exchanges against Neil Magny. And the big question is Khamzat Chimaev Neil Magny level when it comes to the grappling? Personally, I say yes. I know this line is ridiculous. Minus 550 on a guy taking another skyrocketing step up in competition. So everybody can say that the value is going to be on the Leech, but there are certain outliers, Luke. I mean, it's like when Conor McGregor first came up and he just had that power that nobody else had, nobody else was able to deal with. That's kind of how I feel about Khamzat here. I think he is special beyond anything we've ever seen in the UFC before. And I really think that he's going to run through almost everybody until he hits the title. Like, just because he's gotten a low level of competition handed to him so far doesn't mean he's not elite and maybe wasn't elite before he ever got to us type of situation. I love this kid. And I do think that he is going to be able to use that grappling advantage. My only concern is his COVID scare. He had a bad case of COVID and he quit. He nearly quit the sport. Like, he did go out and make some comments that he was not going to be competing anymore whatsoever. And he looks good. I did my research. I did my stalking. He looks like his cardio is on tap. He looks like he's good. He's on point. But you never know how those kind of issues are going to rear their ugly heads and come back and get you at any point later. So slight asterisk on Khamzat Chimaev, but honestly, I think he's the goods more so than anybody we've ever seen. I like him here, and I'm just not sure how to approach it yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you as well. I do think there will come a time to fade Mr. Chimaev personally at a great number with a better fighter. I actually like Lee personally. I actually did throw a flyer on him at like plus 250 against Pons. That was a nice little cash. You know, he's fought a really tough strength of schedule. Unfortunately, this isn't going to be a hot take one for me. I don't think Lee's the guy to do it. Chimaev, very well-rounded. Obviously, you know, comes out of Chechnya, you know, fighting out of Sweden, but, you know, really that strong wrestling background. But he's another guy who's explosive, powerful, fast. You know, the guy can really do it all. And, you know, we have seen Lee drop fights via wrestling. You touched on the Magny fight. He struggled with Jake Matthews in that capacity. And despite Lee actually, you know, not being, I don't think officially KO'd in the UFC, Homeboy's been hurt on a lot of occasions in the UFC to boot. So props to the dude's toughness and all that. But I just don't think, you know, it's enough here. Would I, you know, lay 575 on Chimaev? No. Could you make a value-based case for Lee with the step up? Probably, but it's definitely more so falls into like the trap by the number on Lee type of spot. I think you're kind of just pitching your money away personally, but I don't think there's really any parlay value on Chimaev either. I think it's just a great fight to pass on, and hopefully Chimaev gets her done.
Man, I agree with you. I don't think that you're going to get anything worth your money when it comes to the flip side of this thing. I know the Leech is dangerous. He's one of these guys that like he does well late in the fight. If you don't get him out of there early, he's got second round and third round knockouts on his record. So he's definitely the kind of guy that can finish late. But I don't think Khamzat slows down, man. Like, he looks like a cardio machine. Again, I know he really only has been his whole UFC career can be viewed in less than 10 minutes. So I know we don't have any evidence that he can go 15 hard like that, but I do believe that he has the kind of cardio that he needs. We've seen his teammate, another fighter that I can't wait to return, Guram Kututaladze. That guy, like, he can go 15 minutes hard, and we saw that in his fight. Their main training partners together. You got to think that, if anything, that's a little bit of evidence for you to give you some faith in Khamzat's gas tank. And like I said, I just think the kid is special. But what I think we're probably going to go with, again, the props weren't out before when I looked at this earlier, was I think we're going to go with Chimaev by knockout, because I think the Leech, like you mentioned, is a guy that's been wobbled before. He's been hurt before, and he does have that takedown deficiency. I think he's just questionable enough in the chin area that if Khamzat gets him to the floor, he will pound him out rather than go for that submission. And I think that Khamzat, this is me reading a little bit between the lines, a little bit of tinfoil cap here, but I do think that Khamzat wants to remind everybody. You know what I mean? He was literally the most hyped fighter we have ever seen when he burst onto the scene. And now he's been gone for a year and a half. He wants to come out and remind everybody. And while submissions are great, I mean, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I love submissions. A flashy submission is better than just about anything. Everybody loves a knockout. I think he's going to want to make a statement with his hands. I think he out-wrestles the Leech, and then I think he pounds him through the canvas. So the bet that I'll probably end up making, it looks like they've got Khamzat by knockout at plus 155, and that's calling me. I think that's the way we look on Saturday.
I don't think his inside the distance number is actually that bad at minus 165 to cover some more bases. And I mean, I don't think a submission's really out of the question either. I kind of thought his inside the distance number might be higher than that. I don't really hate that look.
You know, it opened up minus 125, it looks like, and rightfully so. It got steamed. I'm seeing minus 165s, minus 175s out there. And I don't personally hate that either. I don't mind the inside the distance whatsoever. But I got to tell you, Luke, I'm on my 100% ratio here with Khamzat. I think I got to keep letting it fly. I got to keep loading up, just zip, got to put the balls on the table and say, I'm picking my method here and see if I can keep that 100% ratio rolling for as long as possible. So I'm going to have to pick one, and I'm going to have to find a way to continue bragging about getting plus money on the biggest favorite on the card.
Don't hate it, man.
It's one of my few little joys in life. Don't take it from me, Luke.
Knockout incoming, Chimaev.
Hey, I come on this show and I look so stupid. I make bets on Ike Villanueva every week and I get mocked for it in the chat. Let me have my 100% on Khamzat Chimaev, you jerks. All right. This is the one, folks. This is the main event. This is it. Alexander Volkov taking on Marcin Tybura. And if you follow me on Twitter, you already know. If you don't follow me on Twitter, first off, what the hell? Follow me on Twitter. We are bringing back the 7-unit bet, baby. There have been 3 7-unit bets in the history of the Die Hard MMA podcast, and we are a 3-0, 100% when I decide to uncork the 7-unit bet. Luke, you better not be dog shopping on this one. I have tied Alexander Volkov. He was originally tied to Mason Jones, who was supposed to whoop Allan Patric's ass last week for a second time, but obviously that fight didn't happen, so that becomes a straight 7-unit play on Alexander Volkov at minus 225 is where the 7-unit bet is laying. Man, he has every advantage in this fight. He's taller, he's longer, he's got a real heavyweight frame. He's got a 67% takedown defense, and that's after Blades set the record for heavyweight takedowns on the man. So he still has a solid takedown defense rating, and that fight is an outlier. If you take that Curtis Blades fight out of the mix, Volkov's takedown defense is solid. He averages 4.84 significant strikes per minute, and he only absorbs 2.88. He is outlanding his opponents, and he's fought some pretty elite competition. 2 full significant strikes per minute. High work ratio, hard shots, accurate punches, 2-inch reach advantage, and he's taking on Marcin Tybura, a guy who I will call a can crusher in this particular spot. Marcin Tybura has a well-rounded skill set. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to completely disrespect the man. He's experienced, and that's really, I feel like, what he's been using to get by with these wins is that cage fighting experience. His last 5 wins, he is on a 5-fight win streak. Sergey Spivak, when he was much greener. Maxim Grisham, a 205er. Ben Rothwell, my dad, who's looking to retire any day now. Greg Hardy, one of the worst gas tanks in the division with one of the worst fight IQs in the division. Walt Harris, who is Greg Hardy Sr. I mean, he doesn't have a good run. I don't care that he's on a 5-fight win streak. I don't care that he's beaten these guys, and some of them relatively dominantly. Alexander Volkov is not going to gas out in the second round. Alexander Volkov is not going to give up a shitty takedown when he overcommits on a punch. Alexander Volkov is the perfect heavyweight to be fighting in a big octagon where he can stay at range, use his length, and piece apart a chinny Marcin Tybura who got knocked out in less than a minute against Augusto freaking Sakai. Luke, I am all in on Alexander Volkanovski. The life savings, we're backing up the dump truck. I'm ready to go, man. Do you have anything to add? Am I off my rocker? Just don't be betting Marcin Tybura on me.
So I got 2 units on Tybura. I'm just kidding.
That would have been so good.
They probably should have just rolled with that for a little longer, right? To just string you along a little bit.
You could like tweet it out on Thursday, like just kidding.
Yeah, it's actually a pass for me. I think Volkov kind of around that 75% mark is about accurate. Just because I just want to play a slight bit of devil's advocate. I do agree with pretty much every single thing you said. I think Tybura is pretty screwed on the feet here. I think there's pretty distinct levels, despite Tybura not getting blasted in a second. I think this is the time where he goes ahead and gets knocked out. But there is some stuff for Volkov that I can't unsee, which is why I can't lay this with him. Most notably, when in the times he actually has been taken down, like throw the Curtis Blades fight out the window for 2 seconds, just because, you know, Blades is probably the best wrestler we've seen in the history of the heavyweight division. To your point, that does skew his takedown metrics down now. To actually strengthen your argument to boot, you take out the Curtis Blades fight, Volkov stuffs takedowns at 85%. 85% if you take out the Blades fight. So definitely strengthens your argument. The slight hesitation I have with Volkov is the times he has been taken down. Once again, throw the Blades fight out the window, but there are 3 other fights. He was actually knocked down by Tim Johnson, but he pretty much got controlled for the rest of the first round in that fight. Roy Nelson took him down reasonably early and controlled him for roughly 3 minutes. And Verdum did take him down 3 times and controlled him for roughly 6 minutes too. There's just times when he's taken down, he seems like he kind of is just content to play guard. I don't really like his overall get-up game. I just don't think he has a ton of that in the fights. In the times we have seen him taken down, his general get-up game has not looked good. So in a guy in Tybura who is going to try to land takedowns, you know, that is how he's winning his recent fights. He's getting takedowns. He's grinding guys out. Granted, I don't think he's a very strong wrestler. I don't think he's a very strong grappler by any means, but that is how he's winning his fights. That is his path to victory in this fight. I just can't unsee some of that stuff because that is how primarily Volkov has dropped minutes, has dropped rounds in the UFC for him. Outside of, you know, just kind of getting boxed up by Gane. Even that fight was uber competitive, though. He kept up on strikes with Gane too, which needs to be noted. But nonetheless, you know, usually he's winning the stand-up pretty handily in all of his fights. So that's just kind of the concern I have. If in the scenario that Tybura is able to land takedowns, this is only a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight. I wouldn't be like shocked if Tybura could squeak something. I still think it's lower percentage, but I still kind of give him a 25% chance to potentially do that because I'm assuming he's going to try to maximize swing condition. But to your point, I think Volkov probably smokes him within, 7.5 minutes or so of this fight and finds a knockout. It's just, I don't like what I've seen of Volkov on bottom, which just gives me a little bit pause, but I think you're safe, bro. I think that 7 units hits for you.
I certainly hope so, man. And I'm glad you at least finished with the opinion that he smokes Tybura in the second round, because that actually was my prediction is round 2 KO for Volkov. I don't think that Tybura is going to be able to take the heat that Volkov puts out these days and stand with him for much longer than that. The one thing you mentioned was him playing off of his back. You don't really like the stand-up game, things like that. That was old Volkov. We've seen a huge transformation in the man, and something that I beat home the last time. He was the owner of the 7-unit bet last time around. The reason I felt comfortable putting that kind of money on him when he fought Alistar over him was because he finally leveled up, man. He woke up after that fight with Curtis Blades. He put on 20 pounds of solid muscle because he couldn't be the string-bingy striker that couldn't fight physically with these men anymore. Like, he realized, I am not strong enough in this weight class. And he went out and he started lifting. And now you can see the size of his freaking back tattoo. He is massive. He's a real heavyweight now. And I think that speaks volumes to the difference in what he's capable of doing. I don't think that Tybura is even going to be capable of getting him down, if I'm being completely honest. I think he will stuff every single takedown attempt. Tybura is a guy that he's taken down some fighters with some very sloppy technique, guys that, like I mentioned, overextend, guys that are going for broke in the first round, guys that gas. He's not dealing with that here. He's going to deal with a guy that just stays calm, cool, collected, strikes and jabs from the outside, never lets him get in close, and then punishes him when he tries. So I don't know that he's even going to have the opportunity for a takedown. And if he gets one, I think one is all he gets.
Fair point. I agree, largely.
All right. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you largely agree. There you go, folks. If you were waiting for the one and only bet that I've made on this card, that's the one, and it's a big one. So I don't know how much more action I need. I'm going to be very, very careful with my other spots on it, because nothing would suck less than having a 7-unit bet that was supposed to net you 5 units in profit. That's going to get chopped down to about 2.5 to 3 units in profit because of the line move. And then shooting some questionable shots off and losing the guaranteed profit for the week because I felt like rolling the dice too much. I don't necessarily need that in my life, so I'm going to be careful with the other positions I take on this particular card, since that one spot, in my opinion, is so sweet. I want to protect that cash in my pocket. Next fight up, Islam Makhachev taking on Dan Hooker, and we're getting to the top, folks. These next couple of fights, there's no more sleeping here. Wake up, get ready, because these fights are going to be monstrous. Islam Makhachev, the man that they all think is, arguably crowned king of the lightweights. Next, he's Khabib's successor. 20-1. The man is a beast. Dan Hooker, the ballsiest man in MMA today, taking fights left and right, doesn't care, looking for his opportunities, skips flying home to see his wife and kid to take the opportunity to stay here and punch somebody in the mouth. I love this guy. Islam Makhachev, though, 3.31 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 65% accuracy. Like I said, he is Khabib 2.0, tall, rangy, long, strong body lock, great takedowns. He's another one of these guys that can just pick you up and chuck you across the cage if he wants to. That's how he needs to get the takedown sometimes. He has no problem doing that. He does attack with some very, very dangerous trips. He locks you up on the body and, tilts you one side to the other and then kicks that foot out. Next thing you know, you're on your back staring at the ceiling. And he has slick ground transitions. Good ground and pound, even from guard. When he's in people's guard, he's more than willing to beat them up from that position. He's got a snappy deep front kick while he's on the feet that I like. Striking a little bit of a work in progress, but not bad. Dan Hooker, this guy is so good. Trains with he's like White Israel Adesanya. He moves well, he strikes well, he fights long. He's got that nasty knee up the middle. I love that step-in knee that he's got when people try to take him down, just flatlining people with it. Poor Jim Miller. And speaking of Jim Miller, Dan Hooker actually has only been taken down once by Dustin Poirier since the fight with Jim Miller back in 2018. So this man has come a long way with his grappling, really worked hard on it. He's the one actually landing takedowns more often than not the other way. And the question that I have, though, is if you go back and you watch that Jim Miller fight, Jim picked his leg up and tripped him. And that's one of the things that Islam Makhachev does really, really well. Man, this is a spot where I think I'm just destined to lose money on Dan Hooker. You've got minus 550 on Islam Makhachev, and I think he's going to wet blanket Dan. Plus 400 on Dan Hooker, plus 500 on Dan Hooker. That is stupid. He's such a good fighter, one of the best in the division. I like the kid. He can finish with submissions. He can finish with strikes. But I don't know if he's winning against Islam Makhachev. So as much as the value is on the dog, I don't know if there's a point in betting it. How do you see this one playing out, Luke?
Yeah, I think you can definitely make an argument for, a poke on Hooker here, 100%. He's obviously a very talented striker, but at least in regards to like the guys Hooker's fought in terms of like the wrestling, he has fought some good wrestlers in the past. You touched on Jim Miller, Gilbert Burns, Michael Chandler, but I mean, the problem with a lot of those were, a lot of them were also earlier finishes to boot. Outside of that, you run through his rap sheet. He hasn't really fought many good wrestlers actually throughout the course of his career, which has been pretty extensive. But he actually was taken down and out wrestled by Jason Knight, which I don't think is very good. Granted, that was like 5 or 6 years ago, which needs to be said, but nonetheless, Jason Knight, brooding forward pressure boxer, back player, rubber guard, jiu-jitsu guy, getting out wrestled by that guy is like night and day from Makhachev. He said he's gotten better and made improvements. It's like, do we know that though? Like, how often has he really been shot on or really fought any good wrestlers? He really hasn't, to be completely honest. So Makhachev, you brought up all the main points. The guy's an absolute animal. Some people have even said he's actually a better wrestler than Khabib. I don't know if I'd go that far, but he's definitely a very close second. The lacing of legs, the far side wrist control, the general top game, positional control. We've even seen him open up some more for submissions now. The guy is just an absolute nightmare to have on top of you. Like you said, he plays that blanket game well. If he does get in on you, he's pretty much impossible to break any sort of body locks. He's just a wet blanket. And in theory, that limits, the primary win equity of Hooker, which is a range kickboxing match as a perennial kickboxer, And what I will say for Makhachev, despite his like striking not looking pretty per se, you've heard me kind of use the term Russian coast a couple times. He is the definition of actually a very good Russian coast based striker. He limits damage incredibly well. Like, I think he only eats like 1.32 distance strikes per minute. Like, dude's barely even getting touched. Yeah, he got blasted in 2015. That's his only pro loss. I understand that, but in the aggregate, he's had some decent amount of time in his fights that's been at range, and guys just aren't hitting him. He's actually touching guys up more. Like you said, it's kind of single one and done shots, but he's usually actually getting the better of the striking exchanges in his fights. Do I think he's a better striker than Dan Hooker? Absolutely not. I do want to say that, but it's one of these situations where how long is this fight really going to be at space, though? And when it is, how much damage is Makhachev really going to take? Not to mention that Dan Hooker kicks a lot. Traditionally, not what you want to do against a guy who's actively trying to take you down. So if Dan Hooker doesn't kick, all right, well, that takes away one of his best tools right there. Now he has to box the guy, which he could. Once again, low percentage if he's going to be, either taken down with his shoulders on the mat or just stuck against the cage for, 80 to 85% of this fight. I just think Dan Hooker is pretty much screwed in terms of winning minutes in this fight. I think he has to catch him with something. It's not out of the question. Like you said, he'll throw those knees up the middle. He's a big, crafty, long guy. I just think it's really low percentage. I just don't see many scenarios of how Dan Hooker would win a decision outside of scoring multiple knockdowns in multiple rounds, which I guess is in play. But in general, I think the line is largely pretty justified. I think Hooker's kind of KO or bust.
I'm right there. I'm right there with you, man. I agree. And, one thing I wanted to ask, though, and I try not to get too fancy with the props. They can definitely burn you in situations when you overextend just a little bit too much. But one thing that I was looking at on this one is it looks like you can get Islam Makhachev, or I need to refresh my page again because it was this way before the show. It looks like fight goes to decision is about to pick him -120 to the over, and I think you can get even money on Islam Makhachev by decision. How is that not the move? Like, you're taking the -500 favorite, the -600 favorite, and you're getting even money on him to win by what is probably his best win condition, because I don't think he's knocking out Dan Hooker. And yes, there's a chance that he can submit Dan Hooker, but how many people have really submitted Dan Hooker? And we have seen Islam Makhachev be so positional with his grappling that it's been something that he definitely strays to the side of conservative, I feel like, when it comes to his grappling. He doesn't go for those submissions 24/7. I think we see a 15-minute battle. I think we see a 15-minute wet blanket. I don't think Hooker is the type of guy to look for the exit when he's been on his back for 10 minutes. What do you think about even money on Islam by decision?
Historically, I'd agree, and I took that exact same rationale, and I bet him by decision against Drew Dober. And got burned there. He subbed him late. I kind of learned from it a tad against Moises, and I sprinkled Islam in rounds 4 or 5 and then played him by decision as well to cover more bases. Like I said, in his last 2 fights, he's been more active, in my opinion, than he has in the past. Like you said, he's largely been more positional control. But even in that Dober fight, he was really working to pass. I think Dober actually did a really good job at keeping him at bay for as long as he did. But if you go back and watch that fight, he was trying to get out of half guard, pass to side, get to mount, and try. He was really actually trying to advance position and finish the guy. I think Dober just actually did a really good job of guard retention. Then, he went out there and submitted Thiago Moises, who's a high-level black belt as well. So I take a little bit of caution with that. Once again, Dan Hooker, I think, is like a competent grappler, at least on paper. Once again, we have not seen him face a guy like this who is going to most likely cook him to the bone on the ground. We just haven't really had to see him, defend, 9, 10 takedowns, just have a guy constantly shooting in on him in that gritty, grinding type of pace. Historically, his gas tank has been okay, but he got pretty tired against Barbosa, but that's also like a striking-based cardio dynamic. I don't know how his cardio holds up in this type of a fight, so I would say proceed that with a bit of caution.
Okay, fair take. I don't mind it one bit. All right, folks, it is time for your co-main event of the evening. Petr Yan taking on Cory Sandhagen for the strap, kind of, because Aljo's still floating out there with his half of it somewhere. Petr Yan, dude, what is there to say about this guy? Like, he is violence incarnate. He comes forward, never-ending gas tank. He's one of the best Tiger Muay Thai strikers I think we've ever seen. He just destroys people, chops the legs, constantly hammering his opponents. And his gas tank is one of his best weapons. He just grinds people throughout the course of the fight. They were talking about it, if you listen to the commentary on the Aljo fight, when he attacks people the way that he does, they somehow get more tired than you'd expect them to. Like, it looks like a normal fight, and then suddenly the other party is exhausted. And that was true, man. Aljamain Sterling was absolutely worn out in that fight after just a couple of attempts to take this thing to the ground. Now he's taking on Cory Sandhagen, who's coming off a split decision loss to my guy TJ Dillashaw. Cha-ching, that was fun. A lot of people think that he should have won that fight, so I'm not sure how disrespected he's necessarily getting here in this position, because most people think he probably should be in this position in the first place. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. Both these guys are very active. Petr Yan, 5.99 significant strikes per minute, absorbing 3.55. Ridiculous ratio there, over 2 significant strikes per minute. Same thing with Cory, 6.32, absorbing 4.05. So nearly identical, actually. Cory is just ever so slightly more active. Now, Yan does have some wrestling in his back pocket, averaging 2.14 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 66% accuracy, 65% takedown defense on the, I was going to call him the challenger, but I guess they're both kind of the challenger, Cory Sandhagen. Minus 240, minus 250 on Petr Yan, plus 195, plus 200 the comeback on Cory Sandhagen. Man, this is a spot where I just feel like it's too wide. Petr Yan is going to give Cory Sandhagen exactly the kind of fight that he wants. The reason that TJ Dillashaw was so successful in that fight and making it close was because he forced the issue with the grappling. And I don't know that those kinds of cage control moments are the types of things that Petr Yan is going to do. Now, he's very intelligent, so he could go to the wrestling. We can't count that out. It's obviously on the table. I just don't think he will. This guy believes he's the champ, knows he's the champ, wants to remind the world that he's the champ. I think he's going to come out here and work with his hands. And if he does that, he's giving Cory Sandhagen his exact path to victory. Cory seems to really only struggle against strong wrestlers. He's got good BJJ, and his striking is just ridiculous. If this plays out on the feet, this is going to be a very competitive fight. And I'm very tempted on the dog. I mean, Petr Yan might get his hand raised at the end of the day, but I feel like 2-1 on Cory Sandhagen is just a little bit too wide when you look at what they do, what they're capable of, that reach advantage. Cory is a master of maintaining that range control. I think this fight could get very, very close. Luke, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I don't have any plays on either side here. I think Yan does deserve to be favored, but I can't really get necessarily right to where the price is at right now, just based on the stylistic matchup for a lot of the points you brought up. And I'm a big Yan fan just as much as anybody else is out there, but he's also kind of been given like this, invincibility complex, as if he's just mollywhopping everyone and no one's ever had any success on him, which is categorically not true. I mean, you go back and look at the Jimmy Rivera fight. Jimmy Rivera was winning the large majority of the striking exchanges in the fight. It was that he just got dropped and blasted on a few occasions, which is really what lost him those rounds. If Jimmy Rivera doesn't get hurt in those, that fight, Jimmy Rivera beats Petr Yan pretty cleanly, in my opinion. We saw Aldo have strong mid rounds in the second and third, looked pretty good there. Obviously, then he gassed, and then Yan kind of took over the fight there. Sterling had a pretty strong first round, looked good in the second before he got dropped. Then Sterling also gassed. So it's not like guys haven't taken rounds off of Yan or looked good on him to boot. And what we did just see from Cory, he's proven he can go a hard 25 minutes. Maybe there is something, though, to what you're saying, that you fight Yan and him targeting the body and just based on his general fight style that he can just cook guys and sap their gas tanks. Maybe that's the case, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the case with Sandhagen. He's shown pretty consistently, even over 3-round fights too. He pushes a very consistent, hard pace. And in that, I think he can make the fight competitive. I do think there's general technical advantages that favor Yan in this fight. I do think he's the better defensive-based fighter too. So I still favor Yan on the feet, but to your point, I do think the striking is competitive. I do think Yan can have some clinching-based success, kind of similar to a Dillashaw, should he decide to take it. I doubt he can really, hold down Sandhagen, because even looking at Jan's takedown numbers, they look pretty good, but really he's never really controlled many guys outside of, Aldo late, and I think a couple of his earlier fights as well. But in general, yeah, he lands a decent amount of takedowns, but guys have been able to scramble up on him pretty consistently, and that's just generally not what he's trying to do. Even against Elizeu, he took him down 7 times, but I think it was more so to just prove a point that he could take him down. He never really jumped on him in many of the points either, and Cory's pretty scrambly on bottom, so I guess I'd be kind of surprised to see Yan just come out here and try to dive on legs and positional control and stuff. Traditionally, just really not his game, so
it just doesn't seem like something he's going to do.
Yeah, so I more so lean with Yan. I do think he's the better fighter, but I can't get to like 220 Yan. So I actually did make a play on this fight earlier today. I did play the over 4.5 to cover.
That's what I was going to ask you next. I feel like this is another war of attrition, right? Like we've seen Yan cave people in late in the fight, but we just saw Cory Sandhagen go to absolute war with TJ Dillashaw. Now, I know maybe people can make the argument that Yan hits harder than TJ Dillashaw does. That might be true, but I also think that he's going to have a harder time getting to the body of Cory Sandhagen to implement that game plan in this particular matchup. So, again, maybe I'm doubting Yan. Maybe he can do it. Maybe he gets him out of there late. But Cory Sandhagen, again, really his big struggle has been on the ground. If you're going to strike with him, he's in the fight. So I think this is kind of a technical striking game. And I actually really like that over, man. I mean, did you play, 4.5?
Yep. I think I grabbed like -130 135. I think that's a bit short. I think that should be closer to kind of that minus 190, minus 200 mark personally. Both guys have proven to be incredibly durable historically. Jan's never been finished. Obviously, Sandhagen's only been finished once. That was a sub by Aljo. We kind of touched on the grappling, though. Don't really think Jan's going to jump on him. We've seen, Sandhagen tagged on a few occasions, but the guy's shown to be incredibly durable. Jan's obviously very durable. So, yeah, it's probably going to be a higher action, sweaty-based fight. There's going to be some big strikes chucked in there, but there's just not much of a statistical or evidentiary basis to say that, a KO is like crazy high percentage here. So it's not out of the question. It is in play, but like I said, I think minus 135 on the over 4.5 just seems a little short to me. I don't hate on anyone taking the shot on Sandhagen. I do think he's the value side, but I guess I'd rather cover more bases as well.
I like that. That's probably a much safer approach because, I think this will be a war of attrition, and both guys have been incredibly durable throughout their UFC careers, and especially Jan, man. I mean, I know Cory Sandhagen's the guy that can kill just about anybody on the feet, but Petr Yan has been cast iron. He is not a guy that you hurt or knock out. So I like that. Cory Sandhagen by decision at plus 500 might not be a bad little sprinkle there. And hey, before we move on to the main event, I got to say, Based MMA Betting, welcome to the show. First off, thank you very much for watching. But I got to tell you, man, if you're making fun of the bald guy for his haircut, you're already scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, you've already lost. We know I'm bald. It's pretty apparent. So, nice try. Come back again later with some better material. All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors before we break down this main event bad boy for ya. If I could find the damn button, they keep moving this stupid thing on me. There it goes.
I can't breathe.
Pub Sports Radio. Come find us in Southtown 101. Subscribe on YouTube and all platforms where podcasts are found.
Make sure you come hang out for those live chats because that's actual audio from one of the nights we were freaking out during a live betting show. Welcome to Pub Sports Radio, everybody. We got over 200 live viewers for this one, joined by my good friend Luke from Sparring with Reality, Betting in the Club and Sub podcast. Make sure you check him out. It's main event time. Jan Blachowicz taking on Glover Teixeira. My two old dogs, Luke. I'm so happy for both of them, but why they got to do this to me? It hurts. It burns. I don't want to see either of these guys lose. Jan Blachowicz was my dark horse at the 205 division. I called this man pulling the upset. I thought he was going to be live against Jon Jones. He didn't get to the Jon Jones fight, but he's got the belt around his waist now. I couldn't be happier with that. And Glover, the man who got his opportunity, has been working his way back ever since. The best guard dog in MMA today. There is no better gatekeeper than this man. This is going to be one hell of a fun fight, in my opinion. And really, when it comes down to it, battle of the high fight IQs. Like, Glover Teixeira wins based off his veteran savvy in almost every single fight. If he needs to get in there and hurt you early, he does it. If he knows that you're a guy that he can drag into the deep and then suffocate you there, he does that instead. Like, he will pick whatever your weakness is and find a way to get it. Jan, on the other hand, has turned into a monster. That legendary Polish power that came out of nowhere about 5 years ago, he has been putting it to use. He hurts people now, man. That body kick that he's got, I just remember the ribs, the redded up side when he was beating the living hell out of, what was it? I'm blanking on his name. Jerry just knocked him out. Shoot.
Reyes,
thank you. Yeah, when he was busting up Reyes. Like, I love the striking that Jan has. I love the wrestling that Jan's got in his back pocket. We haven't seen it in some time, but it is there. His takedown defense is solid. I think we're going to see a striking match. And honestly, man, I think we're going to see a low-paced striking match. Glover Teixeira has been clipped a couple times. He's been hurt and he's been rocked a couple times. But it's hard to actually put that man away. Jan, on the flip side of this thing, how do you beat him right now? And where does Glover beat him? Maybe jiu-jitsu, if he gets it to the ground, if he's got the advantage in the grappling. I do think he probably has an opportunity to win in that spot, but it's been a long time since we've been Jan put on his back. It's been a long time since we've seen him give up a bad position and then give up control time in that bad position. Man, I think Jan is the side here. He's younger. He's in a better spot physically speaking. I know Glover's still doing the damn thing, but he's a little bit rickety. He's a little bit old at this stage. I do think the legendary Polish power eventually ends up making itself known, probably a little bit deeper in the fight. Maybe this one makes it all the way over to a judge's decision, but I don't know where and how Glover wins this fight if he can't get it to the ground.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you as well. What I will say, though, with Glover, I think he's probably the one guy over the years I have been consistently wrong about in like a large majority of his fights. I try to break him down. I try to call him. I bet against him. He comes through. I finally jump over the Glover side. Then he loses. Like I've just been consistently wrong about Glover Teixeira fights over the years. But what I will say, he's got probably one of the best top games at 205 pounds out there. And what we have seen from Jan on bottom, it has not been good. To your point, it's been, 5-6 years ago or so. But Corey Anderson got on top of him. It didn't look pretty. A couple other guys, too, in the past have grinded him out. But to your point, his takedown defense is very, very good. And I think a really telling stat here in terms of the numbers, Glover does have a negative distance strike differential of 1.69 strikes per minute. And despite him, largely being known for his durability, he has been knocked out a couple times, but he's been hurt so many other times as well. Gustafsson knocked him down twice. Roberson dropped him. Kudalaba hurt him. Smith had him kind of on the ropes early. Santos dropped him in his most recent fight. So, he's getting hurt a lot. And we know that Jan hits like an absolute truck. I just think he's the better striker here. I think he actually is more defensively cognizant now than he used to be. I think it's something that he's tightened up in his game a bit more. But I'm not completely counting out Glover, because if he does get on top of Jan hasn't really shown much of a get-up game when he's been taken down historically, and we know Glover's an absolute nightmare on top. So to me, it comes down to whether Glover can get takedowns or not, because I would still put Glover's top game up there, even at 41 years old with anybody else at 205 pounds. He's an excellent grappler. Like I said, very strong from top position. Jan is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He'll throw stuff up. Like I said, though, his get-up game just really isn't very good. So that is my concern for Jan. I'm sorry, for Jan. But it comes down to whether Glover can get takedowns or not. And I do think it's actually the spot where we see Glover get put down, unfortunately, by Jan. I think his power is just going to be a bit too much. I think he's going to be able to stuff the takedowns, even if you watch him mechanically, how he's moving and defending takedowns now, going back to his Rockhold fight when, he's more proactively shot on. His hips are just much better. It seems like it's definitely been a part of his game. He's addressed from his general, just overall takedown defense too. So I think that's definitely important to know. Like I said, still have some issues with him on bottom, nonetheless, against a very solid top player. But unfortunately, I think it's the end of the line for Glover, but I cannot lay this type of a price on Jan with all of that being said either. I kind of think actually Glover is the side from a money line perspective personally.
I can't argue that, man. It seems the value is on the dog in a lot of these spots because these lines have gotten so inflated. But I think that you and I are basically of the same mind on this one. I think Jan wins this thing. I think he hurts Glover and he puts him down at some point in this fight. But if you're going to make someone take just a side, then yeah, there's probably some value on Glover. The guy just continuously shows up and gets the win. He's shown that he knows how to win. He shows he can get it done time and time and time again. I love the guy. I really do. I've actually been right on Glover a lot, and I've made a decent amount of money with him, betting on him, backing him in spots where everybody counted him out. And this, just for me, Jan's been the same exact story. So it's kind of the end of the line. It's two guys that I have both played for a long time, made good money on both of them, and now I got to pick which one I'm going to end up going with. And these are the types of situations as a fan that hurt the most, because it's like, yes, I want to be a bettor. Yes, I'm trying to make money. But, you picking between two guys that you like and are a fan of is tough. I think I got to go with Jan. I do think he eventually catches Glover. I don't think he makes the mistake that Anthony Smith did and come out too hard, too fast. I think he chips at him methodically until Glover can't take it anymore. What do you think about the total on this one? Right now it's a pick'em, and it's set at 2.5. So we got over under 2.5, minus 110 either side. If you're playing the total, you think this one ends early, or do you think it goes a little later?
Oh, man, this is very spicy too, because I think Jan's going to fight very, very smart and very conservative in his approach, because I think he does respect Glover. He does respect his top game. I think he's going to be very passive, but I still think he's going to win the striking in and of itself there. And I do think he kind of clips him in that, third round or so. I think that's where he actually finds the shot. I think there's going to be a bit of a feeling out process between these two personally. So the total, man, is really dicey at 2.5. I don't know if I really like an over or under there, to be honest.
Okay. That's kind of how I was feeling about it, man. This is one of those ones where I feel like the bookie kind of got it right. 2.5 is about the time where I feel like this fight really cracks open. Someone's going to start wobbling. Someone's going to start getting hurt. And that's the time where you'll see somebody take over. So I don't really want to be involved on the total myself. If you made me pick them, if the people in the chat really want to know, if you're listening and you want to hear a lean, I'd say over just ever so slightly, because I do think that these guys are both going to look to try to outlast the other. Someone commented, rounds 3, 4, and 5 sprinkle on Jan. Probably, because I think if Glover can hang in this fight, drag it out, maybe use a little bit of grappling, slow the pace down, this thing goes a bit later. And I do think that there's a chance that Jan knocks him out late in this fight. Luke, that's the it, man. That's the it. That's a sentence that I just said live on a podcast with 233 people watching me live stumble over my freaking words. Thank you so much for joining me on this show, man. Tonight was fun. I had a real good time breaking down this card with you. I feel like we found some really good spots, had some fun, provided some good entertainment and info for the people. Long-ass show, people. Show my guy Luke some love. If you've got anything you want to promote, anything you want to shout out, man, now is your chance. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me on the show, bro. I love talking to you. I love talking with everybody else in the community and hearing different opinions out there, because obviously I'm pretty solid and grounded in mine just from doing the research, but I like to hear what everyone else has to say to see if anybody can, bring up, any other points I didn't something. So I always love the banter going back and forth with people where we can disagree on things, guys, and it can be respectful in the same point too. So thanks for having me on, dude.
More people need to learn that. It's okay to disagree and not hate the other person.
Yeah, Twitter would be a much friendlier space if it was that if that was the case. But yeah, y'all, you can check me out on Twitter, SWR_betting. Like to have some fun on there too, post some funny GIFs, some funny videos, engage with everybody in the community. So you guys can shoot me a follow on there. Clint touched on the Club and Sub podcast every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Myself and a roundtable of other gamblers are breaking down these fights every single week. I do some work over at dailyfanmma.com for the Contender Series. We got 2 weeks left over there. So if you are interested in any bets content for that as well, I am the man providing it over there. So 2 weeks left, actually coming off a nice couple strong weekends. And then last plug, I do all my full card written breakdowns on my Patreon. I do 2 other content pieces and a weekly podcast over there as well, having a pretty solid year, up 88 units. So if you guys are just interested in tailing another handicapper, or if you cap yourself and are just looking for another valid opinion, I have kind of a combination of both on there. I'd love to have you on board. It's been super fun this year. So yeah, those are running through all my plugs.
All right, man. I love it. Everybody go support my boy Luke. Definitely appreciate your time, man. It was a long show this evening, so thank you for hanging out with me and breaking this damn thing down. Everybody, good luck on all of your shit this week. Lots of betting shows here on Pub Sports Radio, so make sure you subscribe. Press that like button for me if you haven't already. We're going to have the Total Takedown where I break down this thing from a totals perspective specifically later on this week, and of course the Undefeated Post weigh-in show. I got a special treat for you for the next couple of weeks. We got back-to-back big numbered UFC event cards, so we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. Thank you, everybody. You have a wonderful night. Go watch some football, eat some Chipotle. Have a good one.